Huang Yueli apparently didn't expect this fellow to be so shameless, as her expression turned green at this instance. You forced it upon others and still have the cheek to ask others for remuneration? Do you need to be this shameless? I only know that paying back your debt is entirely justified, Liu Buyan replied lazily. Huang Yueli couldn't do anything to him and could only say, then what do you want? I told you this before, I'm impoverished and there's nothing that you've taken an interest in, unless you want me to play the zither for you again. That would be unnecessary. Liu Buyan paused for a short period of time and he took a glance around the room as her vision fell onto the coffee table. There were 3 small exquisite porcelain plates on the coffee table, and contained on those plates were osmanthus cakes, red bean cakes and coconut cakes. Although the colors were different, but each of them were exceptionally elaborate and the colors were sparkling and translucent, like a crystal. Suddenly his heart thumped. Liu Buyan asked, these are all made by you? Huang Yueli nodded, that's right. His lips curled up, I can't tell that a little lass like you actually has some culinary skills. These cakes are done so beautifully, so you should know how to cook as well, right? Then cook a meal for me personally. If you satisfy my palate, then I'll treat it as payment for that unfettering spirit pill. Huang Yueli unwillingly replied, on what basis? Fat hope. Not any ordinary person can taste this miscooking. Liu Buyan's expression turned stiff as he obviously didn't expect himself to be rejected. Hey little lass, what do you mean? Am I Liu Buyan any ordinary person? Ah! Moreover, 1 meal of yours can repay for 100,000 upper-grade spirit stones. Where on earth would you find such a good deal? You've already gained a huge advantage, all right? Still not willing to? Huang Yueli teeheed in her heart when she heard what he said. Although divine Dr. Liu's pills were indeed worth a lot, but for her Huang Yueli to personally cook up a meal, not many people had the honor to taste her cooking. In her previous life, except for Mu Chengying, the other person would be her master. Liu Buyan wanted to freeload on a meal before, but in the end, he was blocked at the entrance by that overly possessive Mu Chengying, which made him extremely infuriated that he pointed out against Mu Chengying and claimed that he valued his lover over his friend. Huang Yueli immersed herself into her memories and went into a trance. Liu Buyan couldn't believe that a living handsome male standing in front of her not only didn't made her infatuated, she actually went into a trance. This totally showed that she treated him as nothing. He was utterly discomfited as he drew out a porcelain pill bottle from his realm ring and slammed it onto the table. Really haven't seen a petty woman like you. Not even willing to treat me to a meal. How about this? You treat me to a meal and this entire bottle of unfettering spirit pill is yours to keep. What's wrong with you? Am I someone who can be bribed using money? Midway, Huang Yueli suddenly thought of something and stopped. How about it? After careful consideration, have you suddenly realized that this bottle of pills is really worth a lot of money and it's a pretty good deal? Isn't it a waste to reject it? Then why aren't you going to cook right now? And serve this young master some food? Huang Yueli's lips twitched as she held back her temptation to slap this fellow to death. Me treating you to a meal isn't impossible, but I don't want pills. I have another condition. What condition? I have a friend who contracted a strange kind of disease. From young he had seen countless divine doctors but had not been able to cure it. Recently there have been signs that his illness is worsening, so I would like to ask you to take a look for him. Even if you can't cure him, that's all right. You can also listen on. Huang Yueli originally didn't wanted to treat Liu Buyan to a meal because she knew that he and Mu Chengying had fallen out with each other. So naturally she needed to stand on the same side with Mu Chengying. At least her relationship with Liu Buyan cannot be too good, right? So she had thought of ways to drive him away earlier, but seeing Liu Buyan slammed out an entire bottle of pills generously, she changed her mind. Because she suddenly thought of Li Moying. Li Moying's soul detachment illness had been incurable for so many years. Furthermore, the last time, because of the fact that she was almost killed by someone, Li Moying's state of mind had been in a mess and actually suddenly acted up even though it wasn't a full moon's night. According to Mo Yi's thinking, this situation meant that Li Moying's condition was worsening by the minute. At that time, Huang Yueli had already wanted to find Liu Buyan to help Li Moying take a look, but unfortunately, when she visited Liu Buyan's courtyard, It was in vain, as he had already left on a trip. Now since this fellow automatically appeared at her doorstep, then if she didn't made full use of him, wouldn't she lose out big time? Liu Buyan's brows rose upwards. TSK, you little lass, you're really so smart. You intend to use me so thoroughly. Aren't you weaving a beautiful dream? Liu Buyan's consultation charges are so high. Did you think that a few dishes could bribe me? Huang Yueli's expression sunk. All right then, since you're not willing to accede to my condition, then there's no need for me to treat you to a meal, so you can leave now. Hey, do you need to be so realistic and so practical? Not going to treat me to a meal just because I refuse to give a consultation? That's right. Huang Yueli's chin rose upwards. I'm that practical. Liu Buyan flicked his sleeves as his good-looking face displayed an unhappy expression. Taking a mile after giving you an inch. Don't feel like treating, then forget it. Think I really need this meal of yours? Saying that, he stood up and strode towards the entrance. He originally thought that once he stood up, Huang Yueli would regret what she said and pounced over to beg him not to leave, expressing that she would obediently make a meal for him, until he's satisfied. Because those large sects' talented young ladies were all like that. He was used to these kind of loosening the reins to grasp him better trick, and every single time he really wanted to leave, these ladies would become anxious and immediately become docile, not daring to be pretentious any further. He thought Huang Yueli would be the same. After all, her background wasn't comparable to those sects' young misses. The result was, he had already taken several steps and Huang Yueli didn't even make a single sound to stop him. Liu Buyan's lips twitched as his footsteps became slower and slower, slower and slower. But until the moment he reached the door, still no one called out to him. Hey, I say, Bai Ruoli, I'm really going to leave. Liu Buyan couldn't take it anymore as he turned back and said. Huang Yueli waved her hand and replied in a lazy tone, Amen, bon voyage, goodbye. Liu Buyan almost missed his breath. I said. I'm leaving, and really not going to help your friend do the consultation. Huang Yueli's eyes shone. Oh? From your words, you've thought it through and you're willing to stay here and do the consultation for him? Liu Buyan's words were stuffed back into his mouth and almost didn't know how to reply to her. If his reply was yes, then it was equivalent to agreeing to Huang Yueli's condition. If his answer was no, then why did he especially stop to say this? Didn't it make him seem like an idiot? Huang Yueli found it hilarious to look at Liu Buyan's distorted expression. You can also listen on. After quite a while, Liu Buyan finally found a way to get out of this embarrassing situation. My meaning is, if your food is really good, then it's not something that I cannot consider about. Huang Yueli's lips twitched as she replied, what's there to consider? I think you just want to swindle a meal. So is your answer a yes or a no? I will not accept such an ambiguous answer. Liu Buyan was so anxious that he almost stomped his feet. Damn it, did this wretched lass needed to be so moronic, or was it done intentionally? He already said he'd consider, so wasn't it equivalent to agreeing to it? Earlier he had just rejected her, so how could he possibly change his mind immediately? Won't it be a huge loss of face? He was soaring heaven continent's #1 divine doctor, and face this kinda thing was extremely important. Unfortunately, this young lass kept persisting on her question, and had to come out with a definite answer, so this made him very embarrassed. Huang Yueli humphed and said, all right, I understand your meaning. I don't welcome fellows who try to swindle a meal here. Didn't you also say you don't need this meal of mine? Then why are you still staying around here for? Liu Buyan choked with his resentment for some time, telling himself that he must cool down. As a man, a 9th stage realm top exponent, how could be possible get infuriated over a young lass? It hadn't been easy for him as he finally cooled down a little. I'm happy to laze around here, so I'll just laze around wherever I like. Why are you still sitting there for? Still not hurry and go cook. I've not eaten my fill, so where would I find the energy to do consultation? Huang Yueli finally gave a smile. Divine Dr. Liu, you're really a good person. Don't worry, my culinary skills are very good and will definitely satisfy you. Your words had better be true. Liu Buyan humphed coldly, as his expression turned into a shade of pink. It seemed that this was the first time someone said he was a good person. Did this little lass really thought so? Huang Yueli had attained her motive and her mood was good as she turned around and prepared to cook. Liu Buyan hurriedly cried out, "The cake's on the table. Remember to make a few more." Huang Yueli blinked and felt slightly surprised. In the past, she had never heard that Liu Buyan liked to eat sweet stuff. Could it be that peerless top exponents with outstanding innate talents all liked to eat sweet stuff? In the past, Mu Chengying loved the sweet cakes she made, and later on Li Moying also liked it very much. Those cakes on the coffee table were left over from what she made for Li Moying several days ago. Now, Liu Buyan actually liked it as well? Could it be that there's some secret that she didn't know about? Eating sweet stuff would increase their way of cultivation? Huang Yueli was thinking as she raised the fire in the kitchen to cook. She was already a fire-attributed practitioner and her control towards flames were naturally well-versed. The flames in her control changed continuously as the cuisine in her wok started to spread an enticing smell. How did you do that?" Liu Buyan's voice suddenly arose from behind her and almost scared her to death. Can you stop springing out from behind other people's back?" Huang Yueli asked in exasperation. Liu Buyan didn't think much of it as he responded, "Your guts is so small and you're still a practitioner. Quick, I'm asking you a question." Huang Yueli looked at the direction which his finger was pointing to and said, "This is the cake which you saw earlier. The method of making it is actually very simple. You only need to mix flour and kudzu root and heat it up to a transparent state, then add in whatever ingredients you like and when it will form its shape when it cools down. For example, you can add red bean to become a red bean cake, add coconut milk to become coconut cake. You can also listen on." Liu Buyan gave a skeptical expression. "Just that simple? When I saw the finished product earlier, the colors were very pretty as though various precious gems, totally crystal-like." Huang Yueli replied, "Of course. The method is very simple, but in order to make it beautifully, you will also need to control the temperature. The best chefs are all fire-attributed practitioners. Do you understand?" Liu Buyan was suddenly enlightened. "I see." Saying that, he stared at that large hot of boiling sticky liquid and his gaze suddenly became blurred, as though he saw a far, far away place from all the smoke which was rising from that huge boiling pot. Huang Yueli gave him a curious stare and felt that this fellow's actions was just too strange. What did that mean? What could he possibly comprehend from a meal? Was there anything more outrageous than this? She couldn't be bothered to find out what Liu Buyan was thinking about as she swiftly moved about and very soon, a table full of food was produced. Liu Buyan had specifically requested for more sweet cakes so she made a huge bunch of them, in various colors and there were a total of 7 flavors. Liu Buyan looked at the rainbow-colored cake on the table and asked in shock, "This is the rainbow crystal cake? Ah! How did you know?" Her words hadn't come out totally when Huang Yueli suddenly recalled that in her past life, Liu Buyan had once seen this sweet cake from her side and that time, she even jokingly replied that this sweet cake had a total of 7 flavors and was called as rainbow crystal cake. In the end, they just finished talking when Li Buyan was chased away by Mu Chengying for freeloading on the meal. It was all her fault that she had actually made something from her past life. If Liu Buyan were to guess her identity from this would be terrible. She hadn't forgot that Liu Buyan and Mu Chengying were enemies. She hurriedly changed her words. "Why did you say that? Giving a name to a dish, aren't you a little too bored? Where did you learn how to make this dish? Who taught you?" Liu Buyan turned his head and looked at her. Huang Yueli gave a convenient reason. "What's the difficulty in this? Sweet cakes are something which every family knows. You're the one who asked me to make a little more and just nice. I have 7 different kinds of fruits at home so I casually made a few. Isn't the variety abundant?" Liu Buyan heard her reasoning and appeared slightly disappointed. "So this is the reason, Huang Yueli nodded her head furiously. Liu Buyan didn't continue asking but received his rice bowl from Huang Yueli as he raised up his chopsticks and started eating. Huang Yueli didn't have much of an appetite. Yesterday she quarreled with Li Moying and today she met Murong Fei, an annoying problem, so her mood was rather down and she didn't feel like eating anything at all. So she just took a few bites and put down her chopsticks. Liu Buyan, on the other hand, had a great appetite. He ate quickly and soon the spread on the big round table was left with just a little bit. Furthermore, he had exceptional interest in that plate of rainbow crystal cakes, and not only did he finish the entire plate, when he was eating, the expression on his face was very strange. Huang Yueli blinked and said, "If you can't finish it then don't. This is meant for 4 people. No matter how much you like it, surely you don't need to binge like that, right?" Liu Buyan didn't even look at her. "You don't understand." The corners of Huang Yueli's lips twitched, as she was left speechless. Just a meal only, what was he thinking of? How could she not understand? However, what she didn't know was when Liu Buyan looked at that plate of sweet cakes, his heart was thinking of something that had happened a long, long time ago. You can also listen on. In fact, he already knew previously that his best buddy Mu Chengying loved that lady's culinary very much. Especially when the both of them met, Huang Yueli would always prepare a plate of rainbow crystal fruitcakes for him. Huang Yueli was the female goddess which all men loved and pursued, and she was willing to put down her status to cook for Mu Chengying, and even to suit his taste. Liu Buyan knew he shouldn't be jealous of him, and he had no right to be jealous. But every single time he saw them, his heart would faintly feel uncomfortable. Adding on to the fact that Mu Chengying's possessiveness was extremely strong and overprotective of his food, there were several times when he jokingly said he wanted to taste sister-in-law's culinary skills. Mu Chengying refused to give up the sweet cakes to him. This resulted in Liu Buyan having an indescribable obsessiveness towards this kind of beautiful cakes. Later on, although had eaten numerous sweet cakes in other kitchens, but none of them could mold it that beautifully like Huang Yueli. So he always felt that the taste should be different. Today, when he saw that plate of sweet cakes on the coffee table, he discovered that it was the same as those in his memories. The external view was simply too alike, and so he was attracted by it and stayed around. He wanted to know badly how did that sweet cake tasted like, and for this reason, giving a one-time consultation really didn't matter much. Now that Liu Buyan finally tasted the sweet cakes, he felt that it wasn't really that nice. Because he basically wasn't like Mu Chengying, who especially loved sweet food, so this, to him, was a tad too sweet for his liking. Liu Buyan remained silent, and after eating for a long time, he finally put down his chopsticks. Huang Yueli's eyes sparkled, as she used her twinkling bright eyes, filled with hopes, and stared at him. Liu Buyan was shocked by her agitated attitude, and at the same time, he felt that her look where her eyes were opened wide looked extremely cute. His heartbeat started to jump much faster. Cough cough, this culinary skills of yours is just mediocre and can barely enter the mouth. So you still need to put in more effort. But since I'm more magnanimous, although your food isn't satisfactory, but I'll still abide the agreement and give your friend a consultation. Liu Buyan said that on purpose. Huang Yueli gave him a cold stare. Was this considered as humans' words? Mediocre, and he still ate so much. Could he actually be a pig? Why wasn't he picky at all? But on account that Liu Buyan promised to give Li Moying a consultation, she decided not to ridicule him. Then thank you, divine Dr. Liu. Liu Buyan nodded. Where is your friend? When do you need me to make the consultation? That of course would be. Huang Yueli originally wanted to say as soon as possible, but on second thoughts, she recalled that the last time she mentioned to let Liu Buyan do the consultation, Li Moying seemed extremely upset, and not only was he not willing to meet Liu Buyan, he even made her guarantee that she would not go and look for Liu Buyan. Not knowing what happened between these two people, why did Liu Buyan seem to have a feud with everyone? But in order to prevent Li Moying from flying into a rage again and even to reject treatment, she felt that it would be better to inform him beforehand. It's like this, my friend is not in Sky Cloud City now, and I've asked him to hurry over these few days. So how long will you stay in Sky Cloud City for? I'll get someone to inform you by then. Liu Buyan complained, I'm willing to do a consultation, and you actually made so many demand. Forget it, on account of your sincerity. I am staying in Sky Cloud City's largest inn, so send someone over to look for me by then. But I'll only stay over here for 10 days, so I'll not wait beyond that. You can also listen on. Huang Yueli gave a joyous look before she exclaimed, all right, I've noted that. I'll definitely come looking for you in 10 days' time. After getting his word of guarantee, Huang Yueli became more affable. Liu Buyan had suffered an entire day of grievance here, and it was only until now that he noticed that she seemed to make some effort in pleasing him, which made him felt slightly balanced. With that, he put on airs and demanded a whole load of requests, and even requested Huang Yueli to pack a large box of sweet cakes for him to take away before he happily strutted away. Huang Yueli was just short of saying, "This subject respectfully wishes your majesty goodbye." In her heart she had already chopped Liu Buyan into 8 to 10 pieces. Only when Liu Buyan's silhouette had disappeared from her sight, then did she wipe the sweat off her forehead as she prepared to return to her room and rest. But just at the instant when she was turning around, she felt an extremely dangerous presence emitting from her back. Huang Yueli shivered with fear, and she didn't have enough time to react when a huge force pushed her onto the wall. "Who were you with earlier?" The familiar man's voice, containing an obvious flustered and exasperated frustration, was heard from the top of her head. Huang Yueli went into a blank and immediately raised her head. Her eyes met directly with Li Moying's good-looking face. But at this moment, Li Moying's face no longer had the usual gentleness on it. Even that usual aloof, chilly look which he had on while facing other people had disappeared. In replacement was a complicated expression which was mixed with frustration, anxiety, and pain. His lower jaw tightened as the corners of his lips pursed into one straight line, his thick brows knitted together into a knot as the gaze that he set upon Huang Yueli looked so ferocious as though he wanted to eat someone up. "Huh? You said, what?" Huang Yueli was still slightly dazed. Li Moying's hands were propped against the wall, his large stature inclined forward against her petite body, masked entirely under his body as his cool countenance leaned in closer, his breathing seemed tinted with a raging hot fury. "I'll ask you again. Earlier, who were you with?" "That man. If I didn't see wrongly, it's Liu Buyan." "Ah, you've already seen him, I was just about to tell you." Huang Yueli was still worrying about how to persuade him to make him go for a consultation with Liu Buyan, and since he had already seen it for himself, she would take this chance to persuade him. Whoever knew, she had just started an opening before she was cut off. "So, that man earlier really was Liu Buyan?" Li Moying stared fixedly at her eyes, insisting an answer from her. Huang Yueli thought that his reaction was a bit strange, but couldn't make out what was strange. She was focused on making him go for the consultation, so without dwelling too much upon that, she hurriedly tried to persuade him. "Oh right, you're correct. Liu Buyan happened to pass by Sky Cloud City and dropped by to visit me. I was just discussing with him, too." Huang Yueli was talking midway when her words were cut in again, and this time, Li Moying directly used his palm to cover her mouth, not allowing her to continue talking. Huang Yueli's little hand grabbed hold of Li Moying's wrist, thinking to pry open his hands, but Li Moying's strength was very powerful and he refused to let go. Huang Yueli couldn't speak, so she could only use her eyes to stare daggers at him. What madness was this man showing? What time was this already, and he actually didn't allow her to speak? Huang Yueli was just about to fly into a rage when she suddenly felt her shoulders sunk. Li Moying's head leaned onto her as he buried his face into her neck. His sexy deep masculine voice sounded slightly blurry. "Don't say. I don't want to hear you tell me personally." "Don't want to hear me say what?" However, Li Moying stopped talking from then on but maintained the tight embrace, showing his vulnerable stance. "You can also listen on." After a short while, Li Moying finally loosened his grip on her mouth and he slowly raised his head, and at the same time, both his hand cupped Huang Yueli's face to make her look at him in his eyes. "You and Liu Buyan. When did it begin?" "Begin?" Huang Yueli was stunned for a moment. "You mean when did we get to know each other?" "You can consider it as that." Li Moying sighed softly. Huang Yueli thought for a moment. The things which happened in her past life, she naturally couldn't talk about it, then. "It's when I was leaving South Yu Kingdom, I think I mentioned to you previously. Do you still remember? I was pursued by a mysterious man during my journey and almost lost my life. In the end, Liu Buyan was living in seclusion nearby and happened to pass by and saved me. He even helped me to treat my internal injuries, so later on, we got acquainted." "Really? I'm afraid it isn't like this, right? Don't you guys already know one another from before? Or should I say, just that one meeting and you've developed feelings for him?" Li Moying's voice was icy cold as it hovered over the top of her head. Huang Yueli went into a short blank and finally realized what was wrong. You say, I have feelings for Liu Buyan? What made you think in that way? Li Moying's perfectly shaped thin lips arched upwards, giving out a slight smile, but the smile looked even uglier than crying. What made me think in that way? You're the one who told me about this. The person you like is an unsurpassed 9th stage realm top expert, and his existence in the entire soaring heavens continent is stronger than everyone else. He's much stronger than me and powerful enough and can give you countless glory, isn't it? So, this person is Liu Buyan. After having a big fight with Huang Yueli yesterday, the blow he suffered was too huge, and originally he was intending to disappear from her sight after today. In the end, he heard that Murong Fei went over to find trouble with her today, and he got anxious and couldn't stop himself from getting close to her courtyard to find out on her condition. After all, Murong Fei's ability was much higher than Huang Yueli by several times, and no matter how much confidence he had in her, he was still worried that she would be injured. Even if Huang Yueli didn't like him, he didn't hope that anyone would hurt her. The result was when Li Moying arrived, he didn't see Murong Fei but an unexpected person, Liu Buyan. Subconsciously, his mind flashed past the words which Huang Yueli said yesterday. She already had someone whom she liked, and that person was an incomparable, unsurpassed top exponent. If it were to say that before this, Li Moying still held a sliver of hope, hoping that what Huang Yueli said yesterday was purely to cheat him, then the instant he met Liu Buyan today, he instantly understood the truth. What Huang Yueli said wasn't a lie. Li Moying gritted his teeth as he continued, I finally understand why you said I cannot be compared with him. Soaring Heavens Continent's #1 Divine Doctor, #1 Pill Master. This kind of identity is something that I cannot hope to achieve. What am I? I'm merely a 7th stage realm practitioner, whereas Liu Buyan is already in 9th stage realm. Furthermore, he has pill refining skills to obtain his esteem status. You following him is indeed much better than following me. Huang Yueli finally understood what he was thinking about and that he had misunderstood something as her expression changed instantly. She hurriedly tried to explain, Li Moying, things are not like what you imagined. Me and Liu Buyan, we're not in that kind of relationship with you're talking about. Li Moying threw a glance at her, his eyes clear and cold. Really? Do you mean that what you said yesterday was just to cheat me? You can also listen on. This Huang Yueli didn't know how to answer him momentarily as she went into a short blank before responding. What I said yesterday is not to cheat you, but Li Moying clenched his teeth and cut into her words. But you've made things so clearly yesterday, what is there to but about? Huang Yueli was so anxious that she stamped her feet and couldn't help but raised her volume. Why can't you let me finish what I want to say? Can you stop interrupting me? Li Moying looked at her. He really wished he could pinch this lass to smithereens. He used all his energy to control his rising fury. All right, go ahead. Huang Yueli took a deep breath and swiftly explained, things are really not like what you think. Liu Buyan and I are not that kind of relationship. He saved me previously, and that was really the first time we met. This time he happened to pass by Sky Cloud City and conveniently dropped by to take a look at me. I didn't talk much to him as well. We only exchanged a few conventional greetings with each other, and I was hoping that he could do a consultation with you only. Li Moying looked at her exquisite delicate face, and his heart was so stirred that he was feeling complicated with love and hatred. Really? It really seems like what you say. Let me ask you, if you and Liu Buyan were just acquainted with each other, then why did he purposely pass by Sky Cloud City just to check in on you? As the continent's #1 Divine Doctor, he intentionally checked on where you're staying at and made a visit on purpose. Why is that so? If he doesn't have that kind of thinking on you, it's impossible that he would do such a thing. How would I know why he did this? Besides this, I remember I told you this before, the person I hated the most is Liu Buyan. I rather die than let him do a consultation for me, and you still went ahead to ask him to help me do a consultation. Isn't this reason a little too far-fetched? In what way? Why must you think that way about Liu Buyan and me? Although his temper is a little weird, but which divine doctor isn't like that? Can't you be a little more tolerant towards him? Why? Your heart is aching. Li Moying's tone was chilly, his expression looked extremely doleful. Huang Yueli was dumbstruck, and the next moment her eyes widened with shock. You! What are you saying? How could I possibly feel anguish for him? I'm doing all these in consideration for you. Really? Then let me ask you one last question. Li Moying stared closely at her in her eyes. Since you say you indeed have someone whom you like, and you say that person is not Liu Buyan, then who is that person? This Huang Yueli hesitated for a moment as her face was perplexed. Li Moying observed the expression on her face, and after some time, he gave an icy smile. Why? Can't answer me. Could it be that other than Liu Buyan, you know another powerful top exponent? If you really do, then why can't you tell me, who is he? Stop asking. Even if I said so, you wouldn't believe me. Huang Yueli threw him an appealing look at him. Li Moying wasn't moved by it as he replied chillingly, if you don't tell, how would I know whether it's the truth or not? Otherwise, you had intended to cheat me right from the start. No, it's not like this. Then just say. Li Moying couldn't bear it any further as he stretched out his hand and grabbed her thin and weak shoulders. Huang Yueli's pearly white teeth bit her lips so hard that blood started to seep out, but she was totally unaware. She didn't know how to explain because no one would believe the affairs between her and Mu Chengying even if she said it out. You can also listen on. Furthermore, she thought she was senseless. Why must she insisted on explaining to Li Moying? If she admitted that Liu Buyan was her sweetheart, then wouldn't it made Li Moying give up on her? But unknowingly why, Huang Yueli didn't wanted Li Moying to misunderstand her. Speak. The strength that Li Moying had on her shoulders increased and his tone became stern. Huang Yueli shut her eyes and by the time she reopened it, she seemed to have a new sense of determination as she replied resolutely. All right, since you must know, then I'll tell you. The person I like is the #1 top exponent in the whole of Soaring Heaven's continent, Mu Chengying. Her words had just fallen as Li Moying was stunned. After several moments of silence, he furiously shook off Huang Yueli's shoulders as his face was filled with disappointment. Enough, stop playing tricks on me. If you really don't want to admit, I can't possibly do anything to you, isn't it? Why must you come out with such a ridiculous thing to cheat me? I didn't cheat you, Li Moying said. I'd believe it if you said anyone else, but Mu Chengying. Ever since the #1 armament master Huang Yueli had passed away, he had always been in closed-door cultivation in Blue Profound Sect until now. He had not come out for the past 14 years. How old are you? When did you have a chance to meet him? And even to settle down your marriage arrangements? This Huang Yueli was speechless when she heard that, and furthermore, there was a sour feeling about it. Already some people had told her that Mu Chengying had always been in closed-door cultivation, and it was only until now that she clearly understood that ever since her death, Mu Chengying had not stepped out of his closed-door cultivation. Why on earth did he do such a thing? Was it because the injury he suffered at the northern ice fields too serious? Or was it because he was too discouraged by her death and didn't want to dabble in the affairs of the world, just focusing on breaking through the 10th stage realm? Li Moying shook his head dejectedly. Furthermore, Mu Chengying's heart already belonged to someone, and it's something which everyone in the entire Soaring Heavens continent knows about. Don't tell me he has a change of heart. He looked at the dazed Huang Yueli from the corner of his eye and didn't wanted to find out what she was thinking at all. He thought that her lie had been exposed and didn't know how to continue from then on. Li Moying's heart was congested with various emotions: disappointment, jealousy, anger, and irreconciled. But most of all, it was the yearning reluctance towards this young lady. Even though he knew that she was destined to not belong to him, but the palpitation of his heart could not be quelled. He clenched his teeth, feeling that he wasn't able to face all these, and turned around, preparing to leave. Huang Yueli regained her senses at this moment and hurriedly walked forward, tugging his sleeve. Wait, Li Moying, don't leave. My matter, I don't know how to explain, and there's no way to explain, but can you find some time? Let me get Liu Buyan to do a consultation for you. He already promised me that he will be able to do a consultation for you within these 10 days. Even if you're angry at me, don't make things difficult for your own body. Li Moying didn't even turn back as he said indifferently, no need. My own body, I know it clearly. Miss Bai, thank you for your good intentions. This Miss Bai was like a sharp prick, piercing into Huang Yueli's heart. It was so painful that she shuddered, loosening her grip as her hands trembled. Ever since the day they got to know one another, Lee Moying had always been calling her affectionately by Leah, or various intimate names on her, and had never used such a polite manner to call her. Feeling the grip by the young lady behind him loosening, Lee Moying's fist clenched tightly before he loosened it once again. You can also listen on. At this present moment, Leah was still worried about his body, and that made him very touched, but this gentleness hurt him even more. He finally understood why Leah flatly denied her relationship with Liu Buyan. It was probably worried that it would be because of jealousy and not willing to let Liu Buyan do a consultation for him. His Leah was always so considerate, and even considered the fact about his feelings and pride, only, until today, he had neither qualification nor courage to deserve her goodness. For an arrogant man like him, if he couldn't gain her entirely, then he might as well give up totally. The minute this thinking flashed past his head, Lee Moying felt his chest hurt extremely, making a determined man like him unable to accept it. He didn't want to make a fool out of himself in front of her, and he ran off in a discomposed state, without turning back to take a look at her. Li Huangyueli wanted to open her mouth and call out to him, but discovered that her throat was incomparably hoarse. She called out the first word but was unable to continue. Looked like Lee Moying had already ascertained that she and Liu Buyan were a pair. Seeing how disappointed Lee Moying was, she wanted badly to stop him. But what right did she had to stop him? Even if she did, what could she say? Even if she did clear up and explained clearly on the matter between Liu Buyan and her, so what about it? In the end, she still couldn't be together with Lee Moying, and since that was the case, she might as well not explain and let him continue misunderstanding her. Anyway, the end result was the same, so it was better to just get the pain over rather than prolonging the agony. Only thing was her heart was still uncomfortable, feeling that she had missed something very important to her. After Lee Moying left, Huangyueli stayed in her room alone, and nothing she did could perk herself up. She had originally intended to go refine armaments in the room next door, but after she lit up the furnace flame, she discovered that she wasn't able to quieten down her heart, and not only could she not complete refining, because her mind wandered about, she always made the furnace exploded. Even if she managed to react in time, she still ended up with a head full of smog, cutting a sorry state. She left the armament refining room in anger, feeling that everything was not going smoothly today. Usually, no matter how frustrated she was, the minute she stood beside the armament furnace, she would naturally calm down and focused on armament refining. But today, she had no way to calm down, and her eyelid kept twitching, feeling uneasy. Why on earth was this? Was Lee Moying's influence on her that big? She left the armament refining room, thinking to take a shower. When she walked to the courtyard, she suddenly heard disorderly clamoring from outside, and in between there were several young men and young ladies screaming continuously. What kind of situation was that? Celestial Light Academy's nights were usually very quiet and had never been so disorderly before. She was preparing to head out for a look when suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Furthermore, the person knocking sounded very urgent as he pounded hard. While he was knocking, he shouted at the same time, "Third miss. Third miss. Are you in? If you are, please open the door for this subordinate." Huangyueli recognized Mo Yi's voice and her heart pounded hard, as an ominous feeling overcame her. She shot like an arrow to the door and opened it. When Mo Yi saw her, he shouted anxiously, "Third miss, something bad has happened." When Master returned to his courtyard this evening, his illness suddenly acted up. You can also listen on. Huangyueli answered in shock. What did you say? Lee Moying his illness acted up. Why did this happen? Mo Yi sighed and looked as though he wanted to say something, but he still stopped himself, only saying, "Third miss, after Master came back from your place today, he shut himself in the room alone. As his mood wasn't good, the few of us didn't dare to go near. Because of that, no one knew when his illness acted up. By the time we discovered it, Master had already lost all rationale, and dashed out from his room. Although he didn't dare to say it out directly, but he tactfully expressed the discontentment in his heart, hinting secretly that Lee Moying had turned out like this because of Huangyueli. Huangyueli couldn't be bothered to haggle with him as she questioned anxiously, "Then how is he now?" Master dashed out into the academy directly, and now the academy is in a state of chaos. Principal Jiang and the rest have came out to stop him, but they were not able to do so. Shadow guards have been sent back to our sect to request for aid. The noise is so loud outside. Third Miss didn't hear it at all. Huang Yueli frowned and she replied in annoyance, earlier I as in the armament refining room and the soundproofing array there is too effective, so I couldn't hear a single sound at all. When Mo Yi heard that, his tensed expression relaxed a little. Huang Yueli cried out, why are you still in a daze here for? Do you know where your master is now? Quickly bring me to him. Mo Yi quivered and immediately responded, yes, Third Miss, please follow me to save master. He turned around to lead the way and Huang Yueli hurriedly followed. By now, Celestial Light Academy was completely in chaos. The two of them passed by a few streets and there were obvious signs that it had been struck by lightning, and some houses had even collapsed by a large half as various terrified students were escaping around everywhere. The academy's teachers had all been called to maintain order, but the academy was still extremely chaotic. When Mo Yi brought Huang Yue to the academy's central square, his footsteps halted as he showed a serious look. Third Miss, master is just in front. Huang Yueli raised her head and saw Li Moying's figure hovering in mid-air. Dark purple lightning encompassed his body as it gave a sizzling sound. Just this sound alone made one's hair stand up. Right behind Li Moying was a pair of dark-colored wings made out of lightning as it spread outwards, extending to 10 over meters. Not only did it enable him to maintain hovering in mid-air, it also enveloped him entirely in a zone of 10 over meters in the thunder and lightning domain. That good-looking contoured face, under the lighting, had originally reflected a pure jade-like skin tone, but now it faintly revealed a bluish and chilly light. His eyes flashed bring about a penetrating glare, looking extremely terrifying. No one dared to go near him, and the boundary of 10 over meters of the center square had been cleared empty. Only the academy's practitioners who were 7th stage realm and above were standing nearby. But even so, they didn't dare to get too close to him. All of them were hiding on the boundary of the square, and they were anxiously paying close attention to Li Moying, who seemed like a death god descending on them. The only one who dared to get a little closer was Jiang Tuxin. Even so, from his anxious and terrified expression, one could tell that it wasn't that he was not afraid, or even to say that he was so terrified to the point that he almost fainted. But as he helmed the highest authority and had the highest power in the entire academy, so at this urgent moment, he was duty-bound and could only brace himself to face the music. You can also listen on. Young sect master, please quell your anger, just instruct us on whatever commands you have. This subordinate, Jiang Tuxin, was trembling with fear as he opened his mouth, bearing a sliver of hope that he would be able to convince Li Moying. However, Li Moying only casted one glance at him before spitting out one word, scram. Purplish lightning and thunder broke through the sky and came attacking towards Jiang Tuxin. Principal Jiang, be careful. Quickly hide. In the burst of shrill screams, Jiang Tuxin used all his skills and barely just managed to avoid most of the lightning attack, but the clothes on him were all burnt and the skin on his chest had been burnt to a charred black color. Jiang Tuxin drew in a mouthful of cold air, feeling that the clothes on his back had been completely soaked in cold sweat. He was both alarmed yet glad that Li Moying only struck casually with no intention to kill him. Otherwise, even if there were 100 of him, it would be difficult for him to escape from death today. Just at this moment, a voice rang from behind, Principal Jiang, are you all right? Jiang Tuxin turned around and gave a bitter smile. Protector Mo, you're here. Mo Yi nodded as he turned around towards Li Moying's direction and immediately frowned. Master's illness this time seems even more serious. Jiang Tuxin wiped the sweat off his forehead and felt that his legs had gone wobbly. I've finally grown some knowledge this time round. In the past I've heard the others talk about this previously, that ever since young sect master have caught the soul detachment illness, every time his illness acts up, it's extremely dangerous. His cultivation would rise sharply to 9th stage realm peak, and his potential is so strong that it reached the standard of heaven defying. No one is able to withstand one strike from here. I had always thought it was exaggeration and never expect that the real scenario even more shocking than what the rumors are. Mo Yi's expression sunk. Every time master acts up, he will indeed lost control and his cultivation will rise sharply, but this time, the situation isn't quite the same. Jiang Tuxin replied, yes, I've heard that young sect master's soul detachment illness will only act up every full moon's night, but today isn't the night of the full moon, so why did he, suddenly? Mo Yi replied, master had suffered serious agitation, which led his illness to suddenly act up. Agitation? Who dare to make young sect master agitated? Jiang Tuxin was extremely puzzled. Mo Yi pursed his lips but did not explain further while trying to change the topic. The most important thing now is to make master quieten down now. If this goes on, not only will he use lightning and thunder to strike the academy until ruins, furthermore his own profound energy will be depleted, and not only will he sustain a serious internal injury, it might even affect his primordial spirit. How could I not know about these? But, Protector Mo, easier said than done. Young sect master is now like a death god who had descended on earth, so who can make him quieten down? Even if all of us go up against him, I think there's not even enough of us to be struck down by him. Mo Yi responded, of course we cannot rely on you, but I've invited our savior. Savior? Jiang Tuxin gave a puzzled look. Mo Yi nudged a little to the right, revealing Huang Yueli behind him. When Jiang Tuxin saw the slim and graceful beautiful young lady standing behind him, he first went into a daze before rubbing his eyes in disbelief, and later shutting his eyes. When he reopened his eyes again, he saw the same image right in front of him. Jiang Tuxin couldn't help but shrieked, Protector Mo, the savior you're referring to, isn't Bai Ruoli, right? Mo Yi nodded and replied, that's right, it is Miss Bai. You can also listen on. Jiang Tuxin's expression turned green immediately as he replied in a bad mood, I say. Protector Mo, stop pulling my leg. What kind of timing is this? Can't you tell that young sect master have already turned into this state? If you're not going to think of ways to solve this, I'm afraid even before the aid from the sect arrived, my Celestial Light Academy would be completely ruined. Mo Yi saw this old man got so infuriated that he started to shiver and his herd was quivering as he hurriedly comforted him. Principal Jiang, don't belittle Third Miss. If there's anyone who can control my master, I'm afraid she would be the only one. Protector Mo, you're not any younger yourself, how could you be so muddled when it comes to a critical timing like this? Jiang Tuxin took advantage of his age and replied immodestly, if young sect mater is clear-minded, I naturally won't suspect that he will give way to Miss Bai. But can't you see the current situation that young sect master is in right now? He probably doesn't even know who he himself is right now, so how could he possibly remember who Miss Bai is? Miss Bai is merely a third-stage realm practitioner and doesn't have as thick skin and flesh like me. How could she withstand young sect master's thunderstrike? Mo Yi shook his head as he continued, Principal Jiang, you're saying that because you don't understand master and third miss. Anyway, if even third miss doesn't have a way to save master, then no one else will. Even if the elders from the sect appears, they might not have a better way than third miss. Jiang Tuxin apparently doesn't believe his words as he blew his moustache and widened his eyes, retorting angrily, nonsense, too nonsensical. I will not allow Miss Bai to do such a dangerous thing. She is the #1 genius in our Celestial Light Academy for the past few centuries, and she's even a valuable armament master, so how can I allow her to give up her life like that? No matter what Mo Yi said, Jiang Tuxin refused to believe him. Mo Yi could only shift his gaze onto Huang Yueli. Third miss, do you think there's any way? Ever since Huang Yueli reached the square, she had her eyes fixed onto Li Moying, and the more she looked, the more serious her expression became. The situation of Li Moying's illness this round seemed much more serious than the previous few times. In the past, although his senses weren't clear, but he could at least used his strong ability to control the thunder-attributed energy within his body and wasn't that disorderly. But this time, Li Moying's back gathered the pair of thunder wings, and that was formed by the vast amount of energy unleashed from his body, an indication of a 9th-stage realm practitioner's profound skill. This pair of thunder wings for the current Li Moying wasn't of any help, but yet he managed to solidify it out. This meant that it wasn't out of Li Moying's intentions, more likely. His body's profound energy leaked out uncontrollably and was unconsciously formed. Li Moying actually didn't control his own profound energy. That meant to say that his soul detachment illness symptoms had worsened once again. This was all because of her. Huang Yueli was both feeling heartache and guilt as her heart was worried to the max. At this moment, she heard Mo Yi's inquiry and immediately replied, Li Moying's condition today is very bad, so I cannot guarantee that I am able to make him turn back to normal. But we simply cannot afford to let it drag on any further. I will go and give it a try now. Mo Yi respectfully bowed. Third miss, we'll have to trouble you then. Please expend your hardest effort. Don't worry. Huang Yueli nodded and her expression turned resolute as she walked towards the thunderstorm direction. Jiang Tuxin saw that she really walked over and was scared till his face turned pale. Come back. Bai Ruoli, come back right now. Don't you know how dangerous it is over there? You can also listen on. However, Huang Yueli seemed as though she didn't hear anything and continued to head forward. Jiang Tuxin grew even more anxious. You, come back right now. Even an 8th stage realm practitioner like me don't dare to walk over like that. How many lives do you think you have? You dare to look for death like that? He was really anxious. This was the #1 genius in Celestial Light Academy and her life was thrown away by a moment of rashness to save someone. What a waste it would be. Jiang Tuxin flashed past and attempted to pull her back. However, Mo Yi blocked him. Principal Jiang, don't be too hasty. Third miss never does things which she's not confident about. Just wait and see. What kind of joke is this? This is a matter of life and death. Jiang Tuxin didn't believe these words, but just that short obstruction from Mo Yi. Huang Yueli had already gotten close to Li Moying and he was not able to stop her in time, and could only watch her with his eyes open, getting nearer and nearer, nearer and nearer. As Jiang Tuxin and the other teachers and students held their breaths and they watched closely, Huang Yueli slowly inched closer to Li Moying, 1,000 meters, 900 meters, 800 meters. Just when the distance between the both of them were around 100 meters or so, Li Moying's surrounded lightning had already enveloped Huang Yueli entirely. Seeing the sparking electricity on Huang Yueli's body, each of them present were so nervous that they almost forgot to breath. Heavens, Bai Ruoli's hair are all standing from the static. Just how strong are the thunder-attributed energy wave? It's too scary. The pressure that Bai Ruoli is suffering right now must be extremely shocking. What should we do? There's still 100 meters. I think it's difficult for her to make even one more step. If she goes forward any further, she will definitely be burnt to a crisp. However, what gave everyone a big surprise was not only did Huang Yueli's advancement not slowed down, but she continued walking step by step, unhesitatingly towards Li Moying's direction. What was different from everyone's imagination was the thunder zone hadn't affected her much. Because she had 9th grade thunder attributed innate talent, so her acceptance towards thunder and lightning were totally different from what an ordinary student could imagine. Li Moying had his pair of eyes half closed, his brows furrowed, maintaining a hovering position, not moving and as though he had not noticed anyone intruding into his zone. It wasn't until the two of them were left with 10 meters in between when he suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes had a purplish lighting hue, suddenly bright and suddenly dim, as his gaze gave an obvious cryptic and deep meaning. Woman, did I allow you to get close to me? Get lost. His voice bore a kind of melancholic magnetism. Huang Yueli raised her eyes to look at him in the eye, and not only did she not retreat, she shot straight forward right to him, and subsequently caught him by the helm of his long robes, pulling him downwards. She mumbled, pretending to be a birdman for what? Come down right now. Go away. Don't make me repeat the third time. Li Moying's expression became even more gloomy as the surround thunder attributed profound energy turned even more wild, as strong pressure suppressed everything in all directions. Even those teachers standing several miles away felt the immense pressure and they kept retreating. But Huang Yueli's feet didn't move an inch as her small hands grabbed him lower hem. Quickly get down here. I don't want to repeat myself for the third time. Heavens, has Bai Ruoli gone crazy? Hadn't she seen what a terrifying condition senior brother Li is in right now? Still dare to talk to him in this way? Does she think that he's still that fiancé who is docile and obedient to her whims? She's simply too innocent. Senior brother Li doesn't even recognize her now. You can also listen on. It's over, it's over. Bai Ruoli's going to be finished this time. Senior brother Li only need to use one finger to crush her. Why does she need to invite her own death by being so reckless? Everyone broke out into a cold sweat on her behalf. Li Moying looked down at her from the top, and his vision swept past this delicate but obstinate face. Although his mind was in a state of confusion, so painful to the extent of exploding, but the instant he saw her, he subconsciously felt his heart jolt. His mind had not yet reacted in time when his body already made its own decision, and following Huang Yueli's strength, he slowly descended, falling right in front of her. Li Moying's lips broke out into an icy smile. "Woman, you have a lot of gut. Dare to talk in this manner to me. Are you trying to look for death?" His voice became chillier, making those who heard him shivered. "That's it. Bai Ruoli is definitely dead this time round." Everyone were surprisingly united towards this outcome, and some of them couldn't bear to continue watching as they covered their eyes. But the next moment, Li Moying made a move which surprised everyone. He grabbed hold of Huang Yueli's sleeve and pulled her to his side. Following that, with lightning-fast speed, he lowered his head and locked her lip. "Emmpete." Huang Yueli's eyes turned super wide. Although in the past she had always relied on kissing to make Li Moying calm down, but considering that she had just drawn the line with him yesterday, she originally planned to use other methods, for example to coax Li Moying in taking the pills or something like that, and if it didn't work, then using her mouth. In the end, Li Moying didn't even bother to waste time on talking, and the minute they didn't agree on something, he locked her lips immediately. She pushed his chest, but unfortunately, she usually wasn't even able to push this man away. What more about now when his ability had rose so sharply? Huang Yueli could only allow this man to lock her right in front of him, using a kind of overbearing stance which was going to swallow her up, as he kissed her passionately. Not knowing how long had passed, Huang Yueli's lips swelled. When Li Moying kissed her, he was unusually rough and even kept biting her. Flesh blood started to drip from the corners of her mouth. Huang Yueli was in so much pain that she couldn't wait to hack at him, but all she did was to struggle slightly, and the strength which Li Moying used to lock her waist increased. The more she struggled, the tighter she was restrained, and in the end, it became so tight that she found it hard to breathe. At this moment, the only thought she had left in her mind was who would come and knock this hungry wolf-like pervert unconscious. Did he really treated her like food, trying to eat her down in one mouth? Huang Yueli couldn't not be concerned about anything else now, but those people who were standing afar were all stupefied as they watched the duo. The thunder and lightning in the sky had gradually subsided. First was that pair of wings behind Li Moying, which became lighter and lighter, smaller and smaller until it completely vanished. Immediately following that, his raging profound energy around him was also under control. Thunder-attributed energy became the center of his position as it slowly withdrew, and after 1 hour later, it was completely taken in by his body. The square slowly regained its peacefulness as the shining moonlight shone and restored the tranquility. If it wasn't for the fact that the surrounding trees and buildings were in ruins because of the lightning strikes, no one would believe that 1 hour ago, such a shocking scenario had just happened. Jiang Tuxin bore an expression as though he saw a living ghost as his fingers trembled while pointing at these two people. This. How did it turn out to be like this? You can also listen on. Mo Yi shook his head and said, "I also don't know how this can happen, but every time Master's illness acts up, only Third Miss has the ability to calm him down. But, wasn't it said that even Divine Dr. Liu had no way to cure young sect Master's soul detachment illness, so why is it that Miss Bai used this kind of method and she's able to cure him? This is simply too ridiculous." Jiang Tuxin was still in disbelief. Mo Yi replied, "No matter how ridiculous, the truth is displayed in front of us." Jiang Tuxin bore with his desire to continue pursuing and said, "Then now, what should we do? Since Master has already calmed down, it shouldn't act up again and this area should be safe now. Principal Jiang, go ahead and maintain the school's order. We still have men here, so when Master's energy is depleted and blacks out, we will naturally handle the matters later on. Since that's the case, then I shall make a move." Jiang Tuxin turned back to take a look and left. Not long after he left, Li Moying finally felt the raging pain in his brain subsiding and his consciousness resumed back to normal instantly. But following that, the soft touch in his embrace made him think that he had started hallucinating. He let go of her lips and loosened the grip on her shoulder, as his throat made a rustling hoarse sound. Leah, Yoiri. Mine. Just after he finished his words, he saw black and completely collapsed. After Huang Yueli regained freedom, she immediately touched her lips, and upon a light touch, she couldn't help but make a SSSSSS sound. It's too painful. Not only was the skin broken, it seemed to be swollen badly. This man was simply like a beast reincarnated. Just as Huang Yueli was about to start scolding him, she noticed the man's tall statue falling towards her, and she instinctively grabbed hold of him. Li Moying fell onto her shoulder, totally not moving as he lost consciousness. Huang Yueli patted his face with strength. Li Moying. What's wrong with you? Quickly wake up. She raised her hand and placed it on Li Moying's forehead, and upon the touch, it was scorching hot, and that made her grow anxious. Although Li Moying had always depleted his strength and fell unconscious every single time his illness acted up, but this was the first time his body temperature raised to such a high degree, and recalling that his condition today had been so serious, this wouldn't cause any problems, right? At this moment, Mo Yi and the rest had already rushed over. When Mo Yi saw this, he hurriedly said, "Third miss, we've prepared a stretcher, let's bring Master back to the courtyard now." "All right, you all must be extra careful, his condition looks really bad. Third miss, please be assured, we will do our best." The few shadow guards went forward and tried to place Li Moying onto the stretcher. But no matter how they pulled, Li Moying refused to budge and sprawled himself onto Huang Yueli's shoulder, totally unable to pull him down at all. The shadow guards didn't dare to be rough with their own master and could only look at Huang Yueli with a perplexed expression. "Third miss, we can only trouble you." Huang Yueli had no choice and could only carry Li Moying horizontally as she placed him onto the stretcher. "All right, send your master back now, the night is late, I should." As she was saying, she stood up, and halfway through, she felt a tight grip on her arm. Lowering her head, Li Moying's body happened to lay onto her right sleeve. Huang Yueli tugged a few times but was not able to pull it out. You can also listen on. Huang Yueli's lips twitched as she couldn't help but suspect if Li Moying's unconsciousness was faked. Otherwise, how could it be so coincidental that he would lay on her sleeve? Mo Yi hurriedly added, "Third miss, looks like we will have to trouble you to go back to the courtyard with us. Master trusts you the most and we aren't as attentive as you, so we might not be able to take care of Master properly." Huang Yueli knew that these were excuses, but she really couldn't rest assured about Li Moying's condition, so she finally nodded and agreed. The shadow guards carried Li Moying while Huang Yueli walked by the side of the stretcher. The group of them walked back to Li Moying's little courtyard. When they reached Li Moying's room, the shadow guards laid down the stretcher and speedily flew out of the door. That speed was like they applied oil onto their feet. By the time Huang Yueli reacted and wanted to stop them, they had all disappeared without a trace. Mo Yi was the last to leave, and he specially and sincerely said, "Third miss, the trouble must still be solved by the one who started it. Master's illness acted up because of you this time, so please stop quarreling and make up with him. As the saying goes, you start the fight at the head of the bed and you make up at the end of it. We'll leave this space for the both of you. What nonsense are you talking about?" Huang Yueli's face flushed a deep shade of red as she wanted to rush upwards to hit him, but her sleeve was still stuck below Li Moying, and as she ran halfway, she was thrown back. Mo Yi took the chance to wrung his neck back and closed the door before he slipped away quickly. Huang Yueli helplessly shook her head as she stretched out to tug her sleeve. This time, she managed to pull it out successfully, but she didn't want to leave now. Seeing Li Moying in such a pitiful state, she simply could not rest her heart. Huang Yueli carried Li Moying onto the bed and removed his shoes before undoing his buttons. Seeing Li Moying's flushed expression and his body kept giving off that unusual heat, as he kept wriggling around uneasily, Huang Yueli expended quite an amount of strength before she managed to remove his outer clothing. In the end, his inner shirt had completely been drenched in sweat. Li Moying was already running a fever, and if he continued to wear his damp clothes, there was no way his body temperature would drop. Huang Yueli had no choice but to remove his inner shirt. But taking of a man's inner shirt was a rather ambiguous matter. Especially after Huang Yueli removed Li Moying's collar buttons, that perfect figure was instantly exposed, That robust and sculpted contours on his body made Huang Yueli unable to resist taking a few more glances. It was until Li Moying gave a low moaning sound before she reacted and realized that her hand was actually touching his body. She tried to withdraw her hand but was held by Li Moying's scorching hand. "Little fox," the man's low groaning as his tone was mixed with a hoarse voice brought about by the high fever, kept reverberating. Huang Yueli couldn't hear him clearly as she inched in slightly closer and asked, "What's the matter? Where are you feeling unwell? Are you thirsty? Let me go, I'll get you some water and fever-reducing pills, you have to take some." As she was saying that, she pulled her hand out and tried to stand up. However, Li Moying tugged onto her, refusing to let go as he kept mumbling, "Little fox, don't leave me." Huang Yueli was stunned, and it was until now that she heard him clearly that Li Moying actually called her little fox. This greeting really made her reminisce. You can also listen on. In her past life, Mu Chengying had called her in the same way, and now Li Moying called her that several times. Was it just a coincidence? Something seemed to flash past Huang Yueli's mind, feeling that something was wrong, but she wasn't able to grasp that thought. She wanted to push Li Moying aside, but upon touching him, feeling his scorching hot chest, it made her go into a dilemma. Huang Yueli's face flushed as she cried out softly, Li Moying, let me go. I'm not going to leave, just going to get some water for you to take medication, be obedient." "No, I'm not letting go," Li Moying abruptly rejected. Huang Yueli stared hard at him. This man was too childish, wasn't he? He's already so sick to this extent that he's already unconscious, but he still doesn't know what he's doing. Still so willful. Simply no different from a 3-year-old kid. Just as she was preparing to fire up, Li Moying suddenly moved, and immediately after that, he sat upwards. "Hey, why did you suddenly get up?" Huang Yueli wanted to push him down, but facing Li Moying's eyes, her heart raced wildly. Because Li Moying's expression looked too terrifying, totally not like his usual self. That pair of alluring peach blossom eyes shone a cool, stern ray, and his expression was deep but reserved, yet bringing about an undebatable imposing manner. At that moment, she thought she was looking at Mu Chengying. Just as Huang Yueli was in a daze, Li Moying had already brought her into his embrace as he hugged her tightly. That kind of energy was so powerful and tight that she found it hard to breathe. "Li Moying, what are you doing? Let me go. I can't breathe." But Li Moying seemed as though he didn't hear her. Huang Yueli even began to feel that his body shaking continuously. What are you doing?" Following that, she heard Li Moying's voice by the side of her ear. "Little fox, you're not allowed to leave. I will not allow you to go search for materials on your own. Do you know how dangerous the places you are heading are? Because of armament refining, don't you even want your life? No way, without me accompanying you in future, you're not allowed to go to such dangerous places. Hey, what concern does it have to do with you? I have my own personal freedom to go wherever I want to." Huang Yueli subconsciously rebuked. But very quickly, she realized that something was wrong. Wait a minute, when have I gone to any dangerous places to search for materials? Ever since her rebirth, due to her lack of ability, hadn't she been extra careful in everything she did? She no longer dared to go around risking her life like in her past life. Not waiting for her to thinking clearly, Li Moying opened his mouth once again. "Little fox, I know you're anxious about fixing the Sky Phoenix ring, but this matter cannot be hurried. Do you know that every time a god relic appears, how many people's greed and coveting does it attract? You must maintain a low profile while handling things and do it slowly. Don't always trust the people next to you, especially that eldest miss from Celestial Heaven's Gate." Hearing that, Huang Yueli seemed to be struck by lightning as she was so shocked that she could not say a single word. After some time, she blankly said, what did you just say? Sky Phoenix ring? How do you know about the Sky Phoenix ring?" But Li Moying suddenly stopped talking at this moment. Huang Yueli struggled in his embrace as she kept wriggling her body. "Tell me clearly, how did you find out about such things? Anne, Celestial Heaven's Gate's eldest young miss, who on earth are you exactly?" You can also listen on. Li Moying kept silent, not saying a word. Quickly say something, Huang Yu urged, feeling that she was on the verge of going crazy. The things that Li Moying said was too abnormal and something was absolutely not right. How could he possibly know about the Sky Phoenix Ring's matters? And how could he possibly knew about her relationship with Ling Qingyu? Even calling her little fox. He was merely a South Sky Region's sect disciple, and no matter how good his innate talent was, it was not possible for him to know about the secret about Sky Emperor City's hidden sacred ground, nor to know about the Sky Phoenix Ring. In her past life, right before she was surrounded and attacked in the northern ice fields, she only told 3 people about this: Li Moying, Ling Qingyu and her master. Furthermore, Li Moying's tone when talking to her was too intimate, and these words seemed as though he had known her long ago, as though she had heard it from Li Moying a very long time ago. That year, she was anxious about fixing the Sky Phoenix Ring, and many months later, she had continuously went around several extreme locations to search for materials, and Mu Chengying was extremely worried and very angry. So, he seemed to have said the same thing before, and warned her that Ling Qingyu could not be trusted, but she didn't believe him at this time that her closest female friend whom she made since young could possibly betrayed her. Scenes by scenes of old memories floated past her mind, and an answer suddenly arose in Huang Yueli's heart. An unbelievable answer. Huang Yueli used all her strength to push Li Moying aside and continued interrogating him. Why aren't you speaking? Quickly tell me, who on earth are you? What do you mean by the things you said earlier? Tell me. She was extremely anxious, but not only did Li Moying not talk, the hand that was holding on to her gradually loosened. After her forceful push, his entire body gradually fell backwards and he laid limp on the bed. Huang Yueli's eyes widened in disbelief. At such a critical timing, this man actually fainted just like that. She couldn't care less about the differences between a man and a woman, and totally ignored that Li Moying was currently naked as she pounced on top of him and got close to his ear shouting, "Wake up, quickly wake up. Damn it, what on earth do you mean? Are you, or are you not? Him?" However, no matter how hard Huang Yueli shook, Li Moying had no reaction at all. Numerous ants seemed to climb all over her body as her heart was empty and her mind was all confused, totally unable to believe that such a thing could happen. Earlier those words were obviously something that only Mu Chengying would say. Could it be that Li Moying was actually Mu Chengying? But if he was, then how come he didn't express his real identity to her? Furthermore, wasn't Mu Chengying safely in Blue Profound Sect under closed-door cultivation? If he wasn't Mu Chengying, then how would he knew about such things, and who exactly was he? Huang Yueli wanted badly to know the truth, but Li Moying was burning up entirely as his fever seemed even more serious than before. There were several times when she couldn't hold it in and tried various ways to make him awake so that she could ask him clearly, but in the end, she couldn't bear to do so. No, Li Moying was already very pitiful, so how could she not care about his body just for an answer? It's better that she tolerated with it and wait till dawn before asking him clearly. Although that was what she thought, but the process of waiting was just too hard to bear with. Huang Yueli was restless as she kept prancing around Li Moying's bedside as she stated at that pale handsome face with complicated feelings. You can also listen on. There were many things which she had not suspected in the past, and so she would not considered in that direction. But the minute a seed of suspicion was planted, when one looked back, it was easy to find out that actually, many things seemed to have tiny hints. For example, Li Moying and Mu Chengying were both thunder-attributed practitioners and their innate talents were outstanding, their characters were exactly the same. For example, Li Moying would usually make some small movements without realizing it. The tone he spoke with bore Mu Chengying's shadow, and especially after his soul detachment illness acted up, he would say some absurd things, and upon recalling that it seemed a little too ambiguous. And another example was both of them would call her Leah, little fox. Other than that, no one else ever called her in that way. Most important was when she was in South Yu Kingdom, the first time she saw Li Moying's looks under that mask. For instance, she had an illusion that the person she saw was Mu Chengying himself. That pair of penetrating and seductive peach-blossomed eyes was simply alike. Actually, it wasn't that there weren't any men with beautiful eyes, but what really linked that together was the expression in that pair of eyes. That unfathomable gaze, was something that she had not seen in other people's eyes previously. Every time she saw Li Moying, she would feel a sense of familiarity, and to be moved by him was something that she couldn't control. It was as though the both of them had already knew one another from a long, long time ago and were so familiar that they were able to connect at such a deep level with each other, and could interact with each other so naturally. So was that to say that they were actually the same person? Huang Yueli was at a loss repeatedly in her heart. She very much wished that the truth was so, as she seemed to have found a bit of evidence. But this matter was just too outrageous and it made her apprehensive, not daring to put too much heart into it. Just as her heart was in a flurry, Li Moying, who was lying on the bed, started moaning once again. He couldn't sleep peacefully and his brows were tightly knitted, his face extremely pale as his forehead kept sprouting cold sweat. Little fox, Huang Yueli was just sitting by his bed as she held his hand and replied worryingly, "I'm here, where are you feeling uncomfortable? Do you want me to get Mo Yi to bring Liu Buyan here and take a look at you?" The force in Li Moying's hand suddenly increased as he grabbed her delicate hand tightly, making her feel pain. "No, don't leave. Don't look for him." Li Moying's thick and black brows trembled several times as he tried to pry open his eyes, looking at her in a daze, trying to see her, revealing a weakened expression. Such an overbearing and arrogant man, the minute he expressed his weakness, the killing power increased by folds. Huang Yueli's heart jumped immediately and went according to his wishes. All right, I won't look for him. Can you let me go for a while and I'll pour you some water?" Li Moying's expression was still dazed and didn't know how awake he was. He looked at Huang Yueli for a while before he relaxed the strength on his hand slightly. Huang Yueli slipped into the Sky Phoenix ring and made a pot of Spirit Saint spring water. She then filled a glassful of water and delivered it to his mouth. But unfortunately, Li Moying was very uncooperative and no matter how Huang Yueli tried to feed him, the water kept spilling out until his pillow was all wet, and he still wasn't able to drink a single bit of it. Huang Yueli helplessly shook her head when she saw this. "Looks like there's no other way. Are you doing this on purpose? You can also listen on." Huang Yueli stretched out her hand and pinched Li Moying's face. Looking at his wrinkled-up look, her heart seemed to be filled with a little gentleness. She raised her head up and drank a mouthful of water before leaning over to seal Li Moying's mouth. Li Moying really obediently opened his mouth and swallowed the Spirit Saint spring water down. Huang Yueli took one mouthful after another to feed him, and right after she fed him the last mouthful of water, Li Moying suddenly turned from passive to active behavior as he started drawing away the breath from her mouth. MMMPH. Huang Yueli groaned and tried to push him aside when she felt the profound energy within her body seem to be drawn away and swam towards Li Moying's direction. At the same time, her primordial spirit also suffered a serious blow, as she felt dizziness congesting her entire mind. For that moment, she seemed to have felt the suffering that Li Moying's was going through, as there was a miraculous link between both their primordial spirits. She felt her profound energy slowly disengaging itself, but there was no way to escape. In actual fact, even if she could move now, she would not, because the situation of the interconnection of profound energies was extremely frail and she didn't even needed to try before knowing that should she attempted to act rashly and blindly which would cause this connection to break, then both of their primordial spirits would be severely damaged. Just as the profound energy in Huang Yueli's body almost seemed to be wrung dry, a dull moan was heard from the back of Li Moying's throat. Immediately following that was the profound energy being poured back into her body. Not only did it replace the original portion which was drawn away, furthermore, there was an additional increase by a lot more. Not knowing for how long later, Li Moying finally released her as his head turned sideways and he fainted once again. Huang Yueli tried her hardest to raise her spirit, touching his forehead only to discover in shock that Li Moying's high fever had decreased. Furthermore, his facial tone seemed much normal as his heartbeat started to stabilize. Huang Yueli heaved a sigh of relief and started to check her own meridians, only to discover that her own cultivation seemed to have increased and had already reached the third stage realm's peak condition. She only needed an opportunity to break through to fourth stage realm. Huang Yueli couldn't help but went into a daze. What exactly was going on? Before today, there were no warning signs of her ability suddenly breaking through. Could it be that It was because of that kiss that she shared with Lee Moying earlier. She wanted to continue thinking, but unfortunately her mind became dizzier and her eyelids kept fighting with one another, as she couldn't take it any further and laid down beside Lee Moying before faint sleeping as well. This long night finally went by. On the next morning, all the way till the sun had raised to the middle of the sky, the room remained tranquil. Sunlight seeped past the chinks of the curtains and shone onto the bed, but it could not make the couple who were in tight embrace awake. After some time, the handsome male moved and slowly opened his eyes. In that moment, his face revealed a puzzled expression as his sight slowly shifted downwards, falling onto his own chest. His inner robes had been stripped by Huang Yueli yesterday night, and right now, he was lying in the nude, whereas on his shoulder, a small head bobbing up and down could be seen as he breathed. Leah! Why was she here? Lee Moying cried out in shock, not daring to believe his own eyes, but immediately following that, he realized that Huang Yueli was in deep sleep and he didn't dare to startle her, so he shut his mouth immediately. He subconsciously raised his hand and massaged his temple. You can also listen on. His head was still faintly twitching and he wasn't totally clear-minded. Not only that, his body was still deprived of strength, as he felt extremely lethargic. The reaction was as though he had just been through vigorous exercise. Generally speaking, after his soul detachment illness, then would such a condition appear? Could it be yesterday? Lee Moying felt that his head hurt even more, as he couldn't help but hugged his head, but after thinking for half a day, he simply could not recall clearly what had exactly happened last night. He could only manage to recall that after he saw Leah and Liu Buyin together, both of them had a huge quarrel and he left Huang Yueli's courtyard in anger to return to his own room, thinking to use cultivation to quieten his mood, but the more he cultivated, the more frustrated he became. Then subsequently, he left that he was losing control of the profound energy within his body, and his subconsciousness also started to become blurry, consolidating with his body's condition now. That time, his soul detachment illness should have acted up. But what happened after his illness acted up? Why did Leah appear in his room, on his bed? Both of them were embraced in such an intimate manner together, sleeping for an entire night? After Lee Moying's careful deliberation, he could only deduce that Huang Yueli was called by Mo Yi and the rest to save him, and probably she managed to control his illness once again. After that, she should be too kind, not bearing to see this jilted man lying alone on the sick bed, and hence she undertook to do what was apparently beyond her abilities and took care of him. But yesterday she had already displayed the fact that she hated him so much. Why was she still willing to sleep next to him? Could it be that he wasn't conscious yesterday and used force on her? Lee Moying immediately got nervous as he pulled the blanket aside to check. Under the blanket, their bodies were tightly wound together, and not only did Huang Yueli rest her head on his chest, her arm was still hugging onto his waist. Besides that, her thigh and his long legs were entwined together, like a little bird relying on him. If it wasn't for the fact that he clearly knew she already liked someone else, based on her compromising posture, he would probably mistook that the both of them were very much in love with each other. But when he saw Huang Yueli's clothes neatly on her, Lee Moying heaved a long sigh. Looked like the both of them were only sleeping soundly under one blanket and no other accident had happened at all. Otherwise, if he had really forced himself on Huang Yueli, this lass would probably treat him as her enemy for life. No, it wasn't right to say that nothing had happened. Lee Moying's vision fell onto Huang Yueli's lips and was deeply attracted by that luscious red color, as his heart thumped. Especially after seeing the teeth marks on her lips, he started becoming apprehensive. This wasn't bitten by him, right? Just at this moment, footsteps was heard from outside the door. Following that, someone's whispering floated to Lee Moying's ears. It's already noontime and the room is still so quiet. What on earth is happening? Surely nothing has happened, right? What could happen? Third Miss is watching over him inside. Third Miss is such an intelligent person. If Master really has any problems, she would have come out and called us. How could she possibly keep silent? That's right too, but if nothing happened, by this time, at least Third Miss should be awake, but there's no movement at all, so this really makes me feel uneasy. You can also listen on. Otherwise, shall we knock and enter to check? That's possible as well. What kind of joke is that? Don't fool around. Perhaps Master and Third Miss are being intimate in the room and not willing to come out. If you were to interrupt them and Master were to flare up, who's going to take responsibility for this? Outside the room were Mo Yi, Mo and Mo San. They whispered very softly, but Li Moying's competence was extremely powerful, so no matter how tiny the sound was, he was able to hear it loud and clear. His eyebrows rose as he called out, "What rubbish are you guys talking about?" Still not shutting up. Mo Yi and the rest didn't expect Li Moying to hear them, and all of them quivered, cold sweat sprouting immediately as they hurriedly shut their mouths. Li Moying turned back and looked at Huang Yueli, who was sleeping soundly. As she was in deep sleep, her fair and sleek face was tinted with a shade of red, looking extremely rosy. Li Moying subconsciously stretched out his finger and caressed her face. Although Huang Yueli was in deep sleep, she instinctively rubbed against his finger, like a little cat rubbing against her most trusted master. Li Moying then realized his movements seemed to resemble a thief as he withdrew his hand. He had finally regained a bit of strength and tried his best to get up, putting on his outer robe before walking out of the door. Mo Yi and the rest hurriedly bowed in respect. "Our respects to Master." Mo Yi stared at them. "Don't you know how to lower your volume? Leah is still sleeping inside. Let's change a place and talk." "Yes." Mo Yi and the rest followed Li Moying as he left, but couldn't help but turned back to look at the tightly shut room. They wondered what Third Miss had been doing with Master last night. She actually slept till now? You really couldn't blame them for thinking crooked. It was all because of their master who put it in such an ambiguous manner. Furthermore, Third Miss had always woken up early and had never been in this situation before. Li Moying brought the three of them into a room by the side and said immediately, "Yesterday night, what happened after I lost consciousness?" The three shadow guards exchanged glances and Mo Yi stepped upwards. "Master, you should have guessed it already. Yesterday you were too eager in your cultivation, which led to your soul detachment illness acting up. You rushed out all the way from your courtyard into the academy's premises, and at that time, the situation was extremely dangerous." Mo Yi roughly summed up the scenario then. As Li Moying listened, his forehead started to crease. After such a major event, all the students in the entire academy should have understood that he wasn't some ordinary student, and as for the academy's teachers, they probably already knew his real identity. There wasn't any place which wind didn't pass by, and there were too many people who knew about his identity. If this were to spread, then following that would be admirers from all places would come to seek him out. His wish to conceal his identity and stay in Celestial Light Academy probably wasn't possible anymore. Li Moying asked again, "Why did Leah turn out to be in my room? Yesterday after she saved me, why didn't she go back? After I was rescued, it's enough that the few of you are here. There was no need for her to stay behind." Mo Yi hurriedly replied, "Third Miss was extremely concerned about you and very anxious, so she followed us all the way back and took care of you all alone for the entire night." He tried his hardest to put in some good words for Huang Yueli. Yesterday, Huang Yueli actually wasn't willing to follow them back, but Mo Yi decided to say that she insisted on following them over. After all, it was precisely because Li Moying had a quarrel with Third Miss which led to the illness acting up. So if they were to patch up sooner, then the whole world would be at peace. You can also listen on. Mo Yi didn't know the exact reason why they quarreled. From what they saw, Li Moying and Huang Yueli were an extremely compatible model couple. From how they usually interacted, they knew that both of them were each other's sunshine, and even if they quarreled, it was probably because they were both too arrogant and stubborn. None of them was willing to take a step back, or purely because they were jealous of a rival in a love affair, since both of them were just so popular. Anyway, it would always be because of these childish reasons which led to their argument. Which couple on earth did not quarrel? As long as they could act as a middleman, giving them a stage to step down, they probably would patch things up soon. Unfortunately, Mo Yi's guess was totally wrong. Li Moying and Huang Yueli were not just any normal couple quarreling, but had completely failed in negotiations. If it hadn't been for the fact that Li Moying's illness suddenly acted up, perhaps they might not even meet in future. When Li Moying heard what Mo Yi said, he was expressionless and merely asked, "Other than saving me, what else did Leah tell you guys?" Mo Yi shook his head absently. "Nothing. After Third Miss followed us back, she had been staying in the room to take care of you." The few of us dare not disturb, so we retreated far, far away. Li Moying shut his eyes and didn't say a single word. Forget it. What was he anticipating? That Leah would say she regretted it. She discovered that the person she loved the most was him? How could such a thing even happen? The lass that he liked had always been resolute and her target had always been obvious. Once she decided on something, she would never change her mind. Since things had come to such a state, then there was no meaning in continuing to entangle with her. Moreover, pestering her would only make Leah hated him further. Then he might as well break it off like this. At least in her heart, she would always remember him in his best manner. Mo Yi, Mo and Mo San secretly exchanged glances, as they all felt that something was wrong with Li Moying. Third Miss was still lying in the room, and according to his usual habits, wouldn't he stick right by Third Miss's bedside, unable to be chased away? Why was today different? Furthermore, his expression looked rather ugly. Suddenly, Li Moying opened his mouth. Mo San, go over to Jiang Tuxin and get him to invite the best doctor in Celestial Light Academy to help Leah do a consultation. She's been sleeping for so long without waking, so I'm not sure if there's any issues. If he has any profound energy replenishing pills, get more over. Right, get him to get some maids over. Hearing that, the three of them heaved a sigh of relief. Looked like towards Third Miss's affairs, young sect master had considered every single detail carefully and was concerned about her condition, so probably, both of them were fine? Earlier. It was indeed their imagination. Mo San hurriedly replied, yes, I'll work on it right now. Saying that, he didn't dare to dilly-dally as he immediately turned around to leave the room to run the errand. Li Moying looked at the remaining two people. Mo Murong Fei is not staying in Celestial Light Academy's southern end courtyard, so go and bring her over. Saying that, he looked at Mo Yi and said, Mo Yi, you mentioned earlier that our sect had sent elders to hurry over on the flying ship, so have they reached the academy yet? Go and contact Elder Chen now, tell him to prepare the flying ship right now. I intend to return to Celestial Light Sect before mid-afternoon today. Mo Yi and Mo were stunned. Master, you're returning to Celestial Light Sect today? Li Moying nodded. That's right. Mo Yi asked, but, Master, your soul detachment illness just acted up yesterday, and although you regained consciousness quickly this time round, your body is still very weak, so shouldn't you rest a few days before leaving? Otherwise, the damage to your body is just too huge. You can also listen on. Moa also spoke out. That's right, Master. What urgent matter do you have? You can just command us. Please don't ever take your own body as a joke. However, Li Moying replied insistently, I must leave Celestial Light Academy by today. I've already decided on this, so don't bother trying to persuade me any further. Just follow according to my plan. Mo Yi was extremely worried. This wasn't a joke at all. Before they met Huang Yueli, every time Li Moying had a relapse, he would be unconscious for several days, and for the next 2 weeks, his body would be in a state where it's extremely weak. Although the situation was a lot better now, but there wasn't any reason for him to leave immediately after his relapse. Besides that, they had not heard of anything major happening in the sect. Such urgency. What's the point of it? He quickly thought up a reason. Master, even if you don't think for yourself, you must think for Third Miss. Third Miss had taken care of you for an entire night until now. She hasn't woken up. Apparently the depletion of her energy is extremely serious, so you must at least let Third Miss rest for 2 days before deciding. A lady's body is much more fragile, so she cannot be too tired. Mo Yi thought that he was very quick-witted. In the past, no one had been able to change Li Moying's mind after he had decided, but now, as long as they brought out Third Miss, Li Moying would more or less give in. How would he even thought that Li Moying casted him a glance but said, who said? I'm bringing Leah back to the sect. I'm going back by myself. Ah! What? Mo Yi and Mo put on an ignorant expression. Their master was the legendary wife-pampering demon Cumsticker. Usually he would stick himself around Third Miss and not bear to leave, but now he was actually going to slip back secretly to the sect while Third Miss was in lethargic sleep. Mo Yi wiped the sweat off his forehead and probed carefully. Master, how many days are we going to stay in the sect for? When will we return to Celestial Light Academy? Do you want Mochi to stay here and tidy up the courtyard? Who says we're coming back here? This time after we returned to the sect, Li Moying stopped, as a hint of struggle flashed past his eyes, but very quickly he clenched his teeth. This time after we returned to the sect, we are not going to come here again. So you don't need to leave anyone here. Huh? But what? Why do you have so many questions? Are you the master or am I the master here? Still not going to execute my orders? Li Moying was originally frustrated, and hearing their bombarding questions, his heart seemed to be burning as he grew fretful. Yes, your subordinate obeys. On seeing that Li Moying really flying into a rage, Mo Yi and Mo Yi flee ignominiously as they ran wildly out of the door. It was until they were 3 miles away from the courtyard when they both slowed down their pace and looked at each other in dismay. Eldest brother, what's going on? Master actually said he's not going to bring third miss away, furthermore, he's not going to come back here after returning to the sect. Have the both of them completely fell out with each other? Mo Yi's face sunk, recalling Li Moying's furious look. His heart felt uneasy, but on his mouth he said, how could that be possible? Master and third miss are like a heavenly couple, they get along so well. Beware that master will pluck out your tongue for talking blindly. Mo was aggrieved. You can't blame me for thinking too much, right? Master just leave like that and forget the fact that he's not bringing third miss. He actually made me go look for Miss Murong. Who doesn't know that she fancies master? Surely master hasn't had a change of heart, right? You can also listen on. What rubbish are you sprouting? Master will surely have his own reason for deciding in this way. This is not something that we, as subordinates, can discuss. Still not going to hurry and execute his order? Mo Yi warned sternly. Moa didn't dare to say anything further as he withdrew his neck and hurried off. Mo Yi looked at his departing back and his forehead creased immediately. Although in front of others, he had to uphold Master's pride and character, but in actual fact, he himself wasn't sure at all. Was Master and third miss really going to end like this? Actually, as a subordinate, between Murong Fei and Huang Yueli, he liked the latter more. Recalling Murong Fei's two-faced demeanor, Mo Yi couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine. In comparison, third miss's looks and innate talent didn't lose to Murong Fei at all. Moreover, she was generous and distinct in love and grudges, bearing an outstanding leader's demeanor. So even if she stood beside Li Moying, not only was she not defeated, but there was a kind of harmonious feel to it, as the two of them complemented each other's brightness. This was what was really known as the ideal couple, a perfect pair. Hopefully Master's eyes wouldn't be so blind to miss such a wonderful lady like third miss. After the shadow guards left, Li Moying sat for a while more in the room before returning back to the bedroom. Huang Yueli was still sound asleep on the bed, but from her breathing, he could tell that her body was extremely weak right now. Li Moying caressed her face in worry as his gaze was filled with yearning as he brushed past her flushed cheek. If he knew that this young lass had a little bit of feelings for him, he absolutely would not bear to leave. But retreating back 10,000 steps to take a look at the big image, even if she didn't like him, but as long as she didn't like anyone, he would not give up so easily. But, now, he had to watch with his bare eyes that she revealed her smiles in another man's embrace, but his arrogant pride refused to allow him to do so. Bam! 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 Outside the door came a knocking sound. Mo-san spoke respectfully. Master, your subordinate had informed your intention to Principal Jiang and Principal Jiang has sent the doctor here. Do you allow Dr. Yang to enter? Come in, please. Li Moying hurriedly replied. A chubby elderly figure, bearing a kindly look, walked in hurriedly. Dr. Yang was not only Celestial Light Academy's #1 doctor, but also a famous divine doctor in South Sky region. Now he was getting on age, he felt that his physical strength wasn't as great as before, so he accepted Celestial Light Academy's invitation. Usually he would not go on a consultation personally but only tasked a few disciples with great innate talent, which practically meant that he was in retirement. However, today, Principal Jiang personally brought him over and asked him to come over, to do a consultation personally. Dr. Yang wasn't willing initially. A divine doctor like him had a high status, so how could he possibly be at anyone's beck and call? However, upon hearing that the person who invited him was Celestial Light Sect's young sect Master Li, he immediately stood up and without a single moment of delay, he hurriedly rushed over. Dr. Yang sat by the bedside as he held Huang Yueli's pulse to do the consultation for her. The instant his fingers felt Huang Yueli's skin, Li Moying's brows subconsciously creased. Even though he knew that this was purely for consultation and was absolutely necessary, but he still felt uncomfortable within his heart. Luckily, Dr. Yang's consultation was speedy and just within a couple of breaths, he already withdrew his hand. "How is it?" Leah had been in lethargic sleep from yesterday night till now. "Is there any problem?" Li Moying asked anxiously. "You can also listen on." Dr. Yang responded, "Young sect Master Li, don't be overly worried. This young lady's pulse is stable and has not suffered any injuries. Only she had expended too much profound energy, so she is now in deep sleep. As long as you let her continue sleeping, she will wake up naturally and there wouldn't be any problem at all." Seeing Li Moying still frowning with a face of worry, Dr. Yang added, "If young sect master is still worried, then I have some 4th-tier pills which could aid in supplementing her qi, so young sect master can feed her with it." Li Moying received the pills and nodded, "Thank you for your trouble." When Mo San sent Dr. Yang out of the door, Dr. Yang kept turning back to take a look. Li Moying leaned over and when he faced the young lady on the bed, his stern expression melted instantly and became extremely gentle. He held Huang Yueli into his embrace and while trying to coax her, he used his mouth to feed her the pill. This scenario was too mushy and that made Dr. Yang's goosebumps stood up. Such an aloof and overbearing man had such a gentle side. This simply made one astonish. "Dr. Yang, this way please," Mo San urged. Dr. Yang then recollected his senses, not daring to look further. In the bedroom, Li Moying lowered his head and gently pinched Huang Yueli's lower jaw as his sexy thin lips plastered onto her, feeding her water mouthful by mouthful. The Huang Yueli who was in lethargic sleep seemed extremely obedient, totally without her usual stubbornness and alienation, lying quietly in his embrace and when he leaned in closer, she obediently parted her lips, allowing him to kiss her willfully. Usually that little fox who bared her fangs and brandished her claws had suddenly become so obedient and this made Li Moying's heart stirred, simply unable to control his own actions. In actual fact, Huang Yueli had been so cooperative so there was no need to use his mouth to feed her at all. But Li Moying instinctively ignored this pointer and not only using his mouth to feed her, the minute he got into contact with that soft and pliable lips, he couldn't stop himself as he fed her the entire cup of water mouth by mouth. Actually, he was very clear that after today, he would never be able to kiss his beloved little thing anymore. So he selfishly grabbed this chance and even though he was taking advantage of her in a perilous situation, he could only made this despicable choice of stealing her kiss. Li Moying had just finished feeding her the medication when the bedroom door came another round of knocking. "Master, your subordinate had already brought Elder Chen over. The sect's flying ship is overly large and cannot stop anywhere nearby so Elder Chen had stopped the flying ship at the nearby hill slope." After Mo Yi finished reporting, he looked apprehensively at his own master. Li Moying had obviously heard what he said, but he didn't turn his head as his gaze stopped on Huang Yueli's face. For that one moment, Mo Yi thought that Li Moying was starting to regret and not planning to return to Celestial Light Sect. Seeing his unwillingness to separate with Third Miss, since he was so unwilling, then why must he still sulk with the girl? Probably young sect master had also regretted being so rash. However, Li Moying looked at Huang Yueli for a while and placed her back on the bed, not forgetting to cover her with the blanket and adjusting the position of her pillow. Lastly, he wrote a note and placed it by the Huang Yueli's bedside as he slowly stood up. "Let's go." "Ah!" Mo Yi was stunned for a moment before lowering his head and responding, "Yes." Li Moying took a last look at Huang Yueli and subsequently, as though he was afraid that he would regret his decision, he took big strides and left the courtyard, not turning his head back even once. It wasn't easy for him to finally decide that he shouldn't drag on anymore. You can also listen on. Mo Yi didn't expect Li Moying to really do this. But he did not guts to persuade him so he could only follow behind Li Moying apprehensively. On a nearby hill slope not too far away from the courtyard, A huge flying ship stopped there and Elder Chen stood beside the flying ship. On seeing Li Moying getting closer, Elder Chen quickly stepped up to welcome him, as he was filled with worries. Young sect master, I heard that yesterday night your illness suddenly relapsed. I had been worried for the entire night, but from how you look currently, you seem to have recovered quite a lot from previous relapses. Li Moying nodded, but before he could speak, suddenly a cry of surprise was heard from behind. Eldest senior brother? Murong Fei was dressed to the nines as she followed Mo to the hill slope. She originally walked very slowly, with an unwilling face, but the minute she saw Li Moying, she got excited and couldn't wait to rush over to his side. But after she ran 2 quick steps, but quickly recalled that she was wearing a long and fairy-like flowy dress. In order to display her outstanding temperament, her graceful elegance, if she were to run amok like a countryside lass, then wouldn't that not be able to show her outstanding uniqueness? How unsightly was that? Murong Fei hurriedly changed into small steps as her waist swayed and twisted, walking over in a flirtatious manner. Eldest senior brother. So it's really you who called me over. That's too great. What matters are you looking for me for? Murong Fei propped her head halfway and from bottom up, she looked addictively at his handsome face as she spoke in a soft voice. Moa suddenly came over and looked for her, saying Li Moying was looking for her. She simply was overwhelmed by favor, not daring to believe a single bit of it. But Li Moying had always been avoiding her and even warning her not to get close to him. In the end, Li Moying was actually here. Could it be that eldest senior brother had suddenly realized her good points and wanted to get closer to her? As Murong Fei was thinking about these, her body started to incline nearer towards Li Moying. Just as their bodies were about to touch, Li Moying suddenly took a step backwards. Murong Fei was caught unawares and her body slipped, almost falling onto the ground. She hurriedly nudged sideways and stabilized herself, but a painful sensation was emitted from her ankle. Apparently she had twisted it. Ah, so painful. Eldest senior brother, I twisted my ankle. Murong Fei was in so much pain that her face turned pale and she took the opportunity to act pitiful, attempting to attract Li Moying's sympathy. However, all Li Moying was thinking about was Huang Yueli, who was lying in bed and couldn't be bothered to take a proper look at her at all. Since you're here, let's prepare to move out. Move out? Where to? Murong Fei was stunned. Li Moying casted her a glance as he replied coldly, back to the sect. You've been out for quite long already. You should have played enough. Return to the sect earlier and cultivate properly. Stop causing trouble for Principal Jiang here. Luckily Elder Chen happened to take the flying ship over this time so he can bring you back together. Murong Fei had put on a bashful expression originally, but on hearing these words, she instantly turned pale. This. Eldest senior brother, you called me over, just so, to make me return to the sect. She shook her head furiously. No, no way. I'm not going back. I want to stay here. Eldest senior brother, why must you chase me away? I'm staying here in Sky Cloud City so that I can take good care of you. Li Moying replied coldly, you have to leave if you wish to, and even if you don't wish to, you'd still have to leave. Mo Yi, Mo invite eldest miss on board the flying ship. You can also listen on. The last time Murong Fei provoked Huang Yueli, he had heard about it in the end and severely lectured her about it, so after that she hadn't dared to create trouble for her. But now if he were to leave Celestial Light Academy now, he cannot allow Murong Fei, this troublemaker, to remain here. Her cultivation was much higher than his little fox and she might take the opportunity to create trouble for Huang Yueli if he wasn't around. So he could only bring her back together. When Mo Yi and Mo heard his order, they walked up together. Eldest young miss, please, no way, don't come over. You two lowly servants, how dare you treat me like this? Murong Fei yelled out with a stern look, but Mo Yi and Mo didn't play along with her tactics as they dragged her up the ship. Let me down. You're too impudent, not even considering your own status. Murong Fei was still screeching and Mo Yi almost couldn't help himself from covering her mouth up. This eldest Miss Murong's voice was very loud and usually she loved to display a rich missy's demeanor, totally looking down on these shadow guards. But she probably didn't know that the strong who didn't reveal their real anger weren't shown by malicious words nor disdain towards their subordinates. For example, just a look from Li Moying was enough to make one drenched in icy cold water, not daring to even think of having any thoughts of resistance. As for third Miss Bai, usually she looked so amiable, and were courteous towards them shadow guards, but in crucial times, her ability would overflow wildly, using her own ability and knowledge, not to mention how she made them submit to her willingly and uncontrollably. This was the realm. Just 1 point alone would give third Miss Bai the chance to put Murong Fei down into dregs, and this materialistic woman actually thought their master would be interested in her. After Murong Fei was dragged away, Li Moying's expression evened out a little. He turned around and looked at Elder Chen, who was in a daze as he spoke. Elder Chen, thank you for your help this time round. I've decided to return to the sect today, so I'll be troubling you to give me a ride back. Ah, young sect master, you're finally willing to return? Elder Chen revealed a look of joy. Great, that's just great. Since you've already prepared, then let's set off now. Li Moying followed Elder Chen on board the flying ship but did not enter the cabin. Instead he stood on the deck and looked down upon his own courtyard. His Leah was probably still quietly resting. Forgive him for not bidding farewell, because in his inner heart was a weak spot, not daring to face the farewell scenario. By the time that little fox wakes up, she would feel extremely happy. Because she had always wanted to get rid of him, this sticky gum. This time, she could finally realize her wish. As long as she was happy, he would be able to accept all the pain, including giving her true freedom. The night scene gradually descended. When midnight fell, the entire Celestial Light Academy had fallen into a state of tranquility. Huang Yueli finally replenished enough profound energy and gradually awoke. She rubbed her eyes as she instinctively felt the bedsheet beside her, but only felt a cool sensation. She abruptly awoke as yesterday's memories gushed all into her brain. Yesterday, when Li Moying's soul detachment illness acted up, he actually said something which only Mu Chengying knew about. And he even repeated whatever Mu Chengying had said to her. This was simply the most ridiculous matter that she had ever come across. She must find out the truth from Li Moying. Huang Yueli struck out one finger in midair and a fireball lit up the pitch-black room. You can also listen on. On the comfortable big bed, there was only her alone and no sight of Li Moying. What situation was this? Could it be that last night she had been dreaming? Wrong, there seemed to be an indentation on the bed, which represented that someone had slept on it. This was definitely left behind by Li Moying. He probably awoke and left first. Anyone? Is there anyone there? Huang Yueli raised her voice as she called out. A maid whom she had never met before pushed the door open and walked in. Miss Bai, you're awake? You've slept for such a long time. Do you feel dizzy? I've prepared some porridge and side dishes. Do you want to eat a little? Huang Yueli shook her head and asked, how long have I been sleeping for? You've slept for an entire day and night and it's now midnight. Huang Yueli asked again, then, have you seen Li Moying? Where did he go to? Why isn't he resting in the room since it's already midnight? Ah, you are referring to that tall handsome Mr. Li? The maid's eyes widened. Mr. Li had already left Celestial Light Academy this afternoon, saying, he's returning to Celestial Light Sect and will not be coming to our academy again. What? What did you say? Huang Yueli cried out in shock. How could that be possible? The maid was shocked by her agitated reaction and subconsciously took 2 steps backwards. Huang Yueli tried hard to control her own emotion as she lowered her volume. You say, Li Moying has returned to the Celestial Light Sect. Are you sure? Did you get the information wrong? The maid looked at her apprehensively and continued, I won't get it wrong. Principal Jiang asked me to come over and take care of Miss Bai, so when we came over today, we ran into Mr. Li. He personally told us to take good care of you and that he was leaving the academy. This afternoon, a huge flying ship came and picked him up. That flying ship is really so beautiful and mighty. So many students saw it and we're all very envious. While she was speaking, Huang Yueli kept looking at her in the eye, not hesitating to use that little bit of profound energy which she had regained, forcefully executing her piercing sky eye technique. The result proved that the maid indeed wasn't lying and Li Moying had really left. Huang Yueli lifted the blanket aside and got off the bed, but her head was still dizzy and she almost fainted. The maid hurried up to stop her. "Miss Bai, you don't anyhow move around. Dr. Yang says you need to rest in bed for at least 3 days. Huang Yueli waved her hand and said, "I know already, please leave the room." After the maid left, she immediately stood up by supporting herself with the side of the bed. Her heart was flustered with only one thought in mind. Li Moying actually left. He actually returned to the sect. Furthermore, he left without bidding farewell. How was that possible? Usually wasn't he difficult to be chased away? Why did he ran away while she was in lethargic sleep? Could it be that something had happened in Celestial Light sect? Her hands moved and seemed to touch something. She lowered her head to take a look and discovered a folded letter. Huang Yueli hastily picked it up as she read it against the light. "Leah, by the time you see this letter, I should have left Celestial Light Academy. Knowing that you already have someone in your heart, my feelings are extremely complicated. I don't wish to leave your side, but I'm really afraid that one day I will be rash and lock you up, hiding you in a place where only I know about, confining you, possessing you and not allowing you to see anyone else except for me. You can also listen on. Am I very scary? In order to stop myself from making this mistake, I must leave. Forgive me for not having the courage to bid farewell to you. I believe that with a powerful and respectable man like Liu Buyan beside you, you don't feel lonely. Wishing you both a long-lived harmonious union, living to a ripe old age in conjugal bliss." The letter was very simple and in the end there wasn't any signatory sign-off, but from that arrogant and overbearing grass script, Huang Yueli would not be mistaken. Li Moying's writing was calm and in the end, he was exceptional, enduring while wishing her bliss, but from what Huang Yueli saw, she seemed to be able to clearly feel the deep pain which the man was feeling in his heart. Writing such things, he really wanted to separate from her. Huang Yueli was stuffed for a moment before angrily patting the letter onto the table. "Li Moying, what do you mean? I already said there's nothing between me and Liu Buyan. You actually made up images in your own mind, and wishing us conjugal bliss. If I really get married to him, you can go cry, and what's more, you don't even dare to face me and talk, not even daring to bid farewell. What a scaredy cat, coward. Not like a real man at all. I'm so angry that I can die. Yesterday you exposed your own identity and made me full of queries, and now without giving me a chance to ask properly, you actually ran away. If you have what it takes, don't let me find you, otherwise I will definitely let you see some colors." Huang Yueli decided on the spot that this absolutely cannot just end like that. She must find Li Moying and ask him clearly. Actually, after last night, she was around 90% sure that Li Moying probably was Mu Chengying but didn't knew what had happened to him. Now that she saw him escaping hastily once dawn broke out, he probably couldn't remember what happened after his illness relapsed and wouldn't be able to recall if his memories had anything to do with Mu Chengying. Moreover, that soul detachment illness was extremely strange. In this, there was definitely a huge secret which she didn't knew about. But Huang Yueli actually secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Just some time ago, she was almost forced into lunacy by Li Moying. She obviously wasn't some flowery-hearted person, and in her past life, she had so many pursuers, and yet she clearly knew who she liked. Why was it that after she reincarnated, the first man she saw, she had a change of heart? She secretly blamed herself for betraying Mu Chengying. Now there was a huge possibility that the both of them were the same person. Then it would show that she wasn't flower-hearted. On the contrary, she had great foresight. Even though both of them bore different identities, but subconsciously, she was still able to tell that the person she liked was there. But even after 1,000 words were repeated, the most urgent matter now was to find Li Moying and find out from him what exactly happened to him. Huang Yueli was determined as she secretly returned to her own room and started packing her luggage. The next day, while dawn had just broke out, Huang Yueli woke up very early and prepared to set off on her journey. Although Li Moying sat on a huge flying ship, she probably wouldn't be able to chase up to him, but the earlier she got to Celestial Light Sect, the better. She first went to Su Qingyu and informed her that she was going on a journey to learn through experience and left her some secret manuals and pills, allowing her and Yu Xinyang to cultivate properly. After this was done, Huang Yueli headed directly to the entrance of the academy. Whoever knew that the minute she walked to the public square, from afar, she saw Li Shuer walking right up to her. You can also listen on. Huang Yueli had not met Li Shuer for quite a number of days already. As compared to her usual glamorous look, the current Li Shuer cut a sorry figure and her face was pale. Furthermore, she seemed to have lost weight as her cheekbone was already popping out. Usually when Li Shuer saw her, she would go on a detour simply because she was scared of being beaten up and afraid that she could find some handle over her and get a beating again. But today, not only did Li Shuer not avoid her, she even walked up to her in big strides as a smile of ridicule hung on her face. By Ruoli, I heard that you've been ditched by my second brother. That's just so satisfying. Huang Yueli's footsteps took a halt as she swept a cold glance at her. Xiaoming's grandpa isn't a practitioner, but he managed to live till 120 years old. Do you know why? Li Shuer didn't expected her to say that and went into a blank. Why? Because he never meddled in other people's business. Huang Yueli threw this sentence at her and turned around to leave. She had no time to tangle herself with this dumb thing. However, after Li Shuer realized what she said, her face turned into livid and she pursued her relentless, blocking her way as she cried out utterly discomfited. You, what do you mean? By Ruoli, you still dare to be so arrogant? Huang Yueli sneered. What do I mean? I mean exactly what the words mean. Care about your own affairs first. After you've been chased out by Master Tang, your days in the academy isn't that easygoing, right? To tell you the truth, Principal Jiang didn't expel you because of your second brother, so if you don't tuck your tail behind properly, then better return back to South Yu Kingdom earlier. You, Li Shuers almost gagged on her own anger but didn't dare to make a move against Huang Yueli, so she could only stare daggers at her and she said meanly, enough, stop pretending. Yesterday a lot of people in the academy had already seen it. That second brother of mine sat on a luxurious flying ship and left Celestial Light Academy. Beside him was an outstanding beauty. Hearing that, Huang Yueli was stunned. An outstanding beauty? Li Shuer saw her surprised look and thought that she had poked through her thoughts. Her heart began to gain some balance as she became pleased with herself. Actually a lot of people know about it, that my second brother is Celestial Light Sect's young sect master, right? TSK, he really had that hidden very well. As for you, you are also able to tell that my second brother's identity is extraordinary but still pretended not to know and plastered yourself onto him. This tactic is really high. But your calculations have gone haywire. Do you think my second brother will really marry you? I'll tell you about it. Yesterday that outstanding beauty who left with second brother is rumored to be Celestial Light Sect Master's daughter, a real sect's daughter. Her status is invaluable and moreover she's an 8th grade peerless genius. As compared to her, you're not even an ant. Who let you be so complacent several days ago? How about now? Second brother left you in the academy and went back along with the sect master's daughter. Now, the entire school knows second brother is sick of you and have ditched you. The more Li Shuer said, the more complacent she became and she almost couldn't help but laughed out loudly. Ever since the day she was openly humiliated by Huang Yueli and Li Moying at the profound weapon chambers, and thrown out to run around naked, her reputation in the academy had fallen to the bottom of the deep abyss. In the past, there were large families' talented sons surrounding her. But now, even if an ordinary trash student dared to hit on her, it was obvious that it was done with the intent of fooling around with her. You can also listen on. This kind of humiliation was all due to Huang Yueli. Luckily, karmic retribution within one's lifetime came very quickly. It was finally this wretched lass's turn to become an abandoned woman. Huang Yueli seemed to not have heard her ridicule, but only lowered her tone while lost in her thoughts. So, he brought Murong Fei away? Sigh, Li Moying was just too nice to her. He already left dejectedly but was so considerate of her, taking away all those who could possibly hurt her. Such a good man like this. Amen. She must grab hold of him properly and not make the same mistake as in her previous life. Li Shuer saw that she was neither shocked nor upset, but instead she began to smile and she couldn't help but frown. Hey, Bai Ruoli, have you gone crazy? Or has water gone into your head? What are you laughing at? Li Shuer looked at her for a while and suddenly she started laughing out. Oh, right, you'd always been daydreaming that you will be able to marry second brother, flying up to the branch to become a phoenix? Now that your beautiful dream is shattered, no wonder you're going crazy. Why don't you take a mirror and check yourself out? Did you think that you have settled Emperor Father and made him confer the marriage arrangement to become second brother's official fiancé? Let me tell you. For second brother, a genius in the sect, only the sect master can preside over his marriage. Emperor Father's words are not accurate at all. Which means to say, she paused for a moment and intentionally said out word by word, you are not second brother's fiancé. Only his plaything. Huang Yueli knew that Li Moying had done so much for her, so all the more she wanted to find him quickly and had lost her patience to talk further with Li Shuer. Unfortunately, Li Shuer didn't knew she was courting her own death as she kept chattering non-stop by the side of her ear. Huang Yueli couldn't be bothered to say anything else to her, and couldn't care less about teaching her a lesson, so she shoved her aside and wanted to continue on her way forward. Li Shuer didn't knew that she had escaped a calamity but still continued to tug at her sleeve. Hey, Bai Ruoli, you're leaving just like that. Come on, let's have a good chat. After all, you'd almost became my second sister-in-law. Dash. Huang Yueli frowned and with a flick of her sleeve, she sent Li Shuer flying. Li Shuer had not expected her to make a move and fell heavily onto the ground. Immediately following that, a burst of flame arose within Huang Yueli's hands and flew circling towards her. Help! I'm going to be burnt to death. Bai Ruoli is murdering someone. Li Shuer saw a crimson-red flame heading towards her and a scorching feeling pouncing over. She was panic-stricken and kept rolling around on the ground screaming and screeching. The both of them were originally in the public square and there were originally a lot of people, but as the both of them were hiding behind the wall, so not many people noticed them. With Li Shuer screaming out loud, a lot of people heard them and headed over. Soon, a circle of people surrounding the area. Isn't that Bai Ruoli? And that person rolling on the ground, isn't that Li Shuer? It seems so. What's the situation now? Why did the both of them started arguing again? No idea. I heard that Bai Ruoli was ditched by senior brother Li. Could it be that her mentality took a perverted change after she was jilted and took it out on the fiancé's sister? All the people crowded around curiously to look at Huang Yueli and Li Shuer. Apparently Li Moying's departure yesterday had spread throughout the entire academy. Huang Yueli then raised her hand and gave a gentle wave. The flame on Li Shuer's body flashed for a moment and was immediately extinguished. You can also listen on. Li Shuer had not noticed that the flame had disappeared and continued to roll around on the ground, screaming aguishly. It was the surrounding students who realized that something was amiss. Yi! Why isn't Li Shuer wearing any clothes? Wrong, it's not that she didn't wear anything, but her clothes had all been burnt by Bai Ruoli. Right. That means to say, Bai Ruoli's control of fire is just too powerful. Li Shuer clothes were burnt cleanly, but there isn't a single bit of injury on her. What's more, it's under the circumstance that she kept rolling around while burning. Her skills are simply miraculous. TSK, quickly take a look. Li Shuer's figure isn't bad at all. Her waist is slender and her breasts are huge. I'm getting turned on by her. Li Shuer rolled around on the ground, and when she heard the crowd's discussion, she finally realized that something was wrong and stopped her actions. She blankly lowered her head, and the next moment, she used her hands to cover her chest as she started screaming while jumping up. You, Bai Ruoli, what did you do to me? You burnt all my clothes. Huang Yueli smiled calmly. Why? Don't tell me you like me to burn your skin along with it. Such heavy taste. I can oblige to your wishes. Seeing Huang Yueli raised her hand, Li Shuer was scared stiff. You, don't come over, don't come closer. She looked left and right and only saw a group of people crowding around to enjoy the show, especially those male students. Their sights were simply vulgar and wretched, looking extremely disgusting. Li Shuer hugged her chest with both her hands as she screamed and ran through the crowd. There were some male students with bad intentions and purposely didn't allow her to leave easily, as some of them tried to grope her as she was trying to leave. It took some effort on her part before Li Shuer finally got rid of these fellows and disappeared like a wisp of smoke into the campus. Huang Yueli sneered slightly. Looks like the last naked run didn't make you learn a lesson, so this time. I hope you can grow some brains. She turned around and wanted to leave. But she didn't expect the crowd to not only give way, but many of them started discussing she and Li Moying's matter openly. As though her separation with Li Moying seemed like a joke. Huang Yueli's expression sunk and profound energy was instantly unleashed from her body. A powerful pressure shot out to its surroundings. She was now a third-stage realm peak practitioner, and among the students in Celestial Light Academy, the existence of her outstanding potential stood firm. Most of the students were only second-stage realm or even at first-stage 8th or 9th level cultivation. The disparity of the potential was too huge, so Huang Yueli's pressure to them was like a stick banging onto their head. Everyone's expression turned green instantly and they clutched their chests as they retreated continuously. There were even some students whose abilities were too weak and immediately threw up blood or fainted directly onto the ground. Huang Yueli didn't even bother to look at them and didn't want to spend any energy explaining to these short-sighted people as she walked directly out of the academy's main entrance. It was until her figure disappeared, those students who were under pressure climbed up challengingly. They exchanged glances with one another and could see the terror in the other party's eyes. It's really by Ruoli, a third-stage realm peak's ability is fully justified. Right, let's all be careful and not talk carelessly. Beware that trouble starts from the mouth. That's right, although senior brother Li has left, but Bai Ruoli is no soft stone as well. Crushing us is no different from crushing an ant. You can also listen on. They finally recalled that the delicate and gentle beauty wasn't some soft persimmon at all. Not only was she Li Moying's fiancée, even without that name, she was still a shocking powerful third-stage realm peak practitioner. Within a mere number of strikes, she was able to defeat the martial arts stage number 2 super talent. Furthermore, she was a skillful and certified armament master. Some women, they are nothing after they leave their men, but Huang Yueli was different. Even without Li Moying beside her, her presence was still invulnerable. Relationship to her was merely a brocade which made her even more perfect. On Celestial Light Sect's flying ship. Eldest young miss, you cannot enter. Master's soul detachment illness acted up a few days ago and until now he hasn't fully recovered, so he needs to rest properly. Please don't disturb him, kindly leave. Mo Yi and Mo Er blocked the entrance of the cabin as they spoke expressionlessly. Murong Fei's expression was extremely ugly as she gritted her teeth and said, I know eldest senior brother's body is unwell, so I'm especially here to take care of him. I've personally made some soup to aid in his recovery. Give way and I'll get some for eldest senior brother to drink. Mo Yi's tall stature didn't budge. Eldest young miss, master had just instructed that no matter who comes, he does not want to meet, so thank you for your understanding. Murong Fei said unhappily, why? Even if eldest senior brother refused to meet any other people, but he will definitely see me. I am his junior sister who grew up together with him. I care for him and want to visit him. Isn't that a normal thing? You all give way. This rain ginseng chicken soup that I made for him was prepared for an entire night with 1,000-year rain ginseng. If eldest senior brother didn't manage to drink it, can you be responsible for it? Mo Yi practically ignored what she was saying and stood by the door dutifully. Eldest young miss, I am merely obeying master's instructions, so please don't make things difficult for me. You simply don't know what's good for you. I want to meet eldest senior brother. Is that something that you two lowly servants can obstruct? Mo Yi was of age and his character was steady, so although he heard these words, he remained expressionless. On the contrary, Mo Er wasn't that patient. Although the Shadow Guards had recognized Li Moying as their master, but in Celestial Light Sect, they were not ordinary outer disciples nor were they servants. They were all outstanding inner disciples, and there were some who were even direct disciples. Speaking of that, They were considered as Murong Fei's senior brother as well, but to be called as a servant at her beck and call, who could tolerate this? Moa laughed out immediately. Eldest young miss, even if the few of us are servants, we are young sect master's servants. As the saying goes, you see who is the master of the dog that you are beating. Even master's fiancé Miss Bai treats us politely, you really don't treat yourself as an outsider. When Murong Fei heard these words, she grew angrier. You actually dare to use a little slut to oppress me? What scheme did that little slut use to bribe you? Hihi, it's no use even if you act loyally to her. Eldest senior brother has already ditched her. In future, I will be your future mistress and you dare to offend me. Murong Fei was still giving unbridled orders. Suddenly a cold voice rang above her head. You say, who is the little slut? That deep magnetic voice was extremely familiar. Murong Fei hurriedly raised her head and her expression was filled with joy. Eldest senior brother, you're finally out. I knew it, you'd definitely see me. You can also listen on. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.